Welcome,
Hey guys.
misfits. And in a second, I think the cat wants to look outside. Hi, kitty. Welcome, misfits, to this episode of Midnight Ranting, Evidence for Bigfoot, where we take out a magnifying glass and and probably a gun, and then go hunting for Bigfoot. So won't you join us for a very good adventure? Woohoo! I
Yes.
want to thank everyone for joining us out there on the inner tubes. If you're feeling fancy, don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. We're a skeptic channel, but after our openers, we'll be opening up the floodgates for the open mic portion of our podcast, meaning anyone could come join us and say what's on their mind. We'll also give everyone the chance to have their own opening and closing statements. Atheist or theist, liberal or conservative, come as you are, just on the seats. You can also find our Patreon page at patreon.com/Amy Newman, which helps us make even more fun content, including awesome Patreons like K.O.
KO.
Camp. Woo-hoo!
Knock him
And
out.
Oz from the Atheist Round Table, but also the Atheist Network Group.
That's that guy Darth
And
Dawkins
also-
hates, right?
Oz and I can't even do, and Randolph Richardson. And Ian Davenport.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you so much, Ian. But also a grumpy old. You guys heard that, right? A grumpy old.
Yeah, we'll have to blur out the
I'm
lips
sure you
so they can't read your lips.
Exactly. But Diana Smith.
Hey Diana, thank you.
Thank you so very much. And Pat, opening up the Bible. Thank you so very much. I have to get my skeptics Bible. Thank you so
Move 'em
very much,
move
Pat.
them to the fiction section. Take them all from the religious section. Move them all to fiction. There you go.
Exactly. Mwah. Thank you so very much. And thank you, Dale. Thank you so
Dale.
very much, Dale. As my board
wait.
falls over. But
There's
wait,
more.
there's more. Pat Lowinger, Dale Pastel, but more? There's more? So many misfits. Dave Gar,
Dave Gar.
thank you so very much. And thank you so very I'm looking for more tools. At this point, I'm just going to hold up two random ones. Thank you so very much, Scott. Woo!
Got a wrench and a hammer.
You're very much ready to be a Half-Life or some sort of video game. Hi, baby.
I'm not even going to
Moonlight
speculate on
wants to
what Amy wants, what Amy does with that wrench.
Oh my!
I'm not
It's
even
hot,
going
baby.
to go there. Yeah.
Neither can I anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, lastly, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe, and hit that all button icon so you can get reminders to be at our premieres or just join our live streams. And with that,
hi, Moonlight.
thank you. Everyone likes jazz hands. I should have been jazzing handing. Is there evidence for Bigfoot? Well, yes, but like the God question, the answer becomes, is there good evidence for Bigfoot? To which my answer seems to be no. However, I'm open to having my mind changed. How friggin' cool would it be for a pack of massively stealthy apes who would end up being our closest relatives? I was recently told elephants could do the same thing. A shame the hunters have plenty of elephants. A shame the hunters have plenty of elephants. I did it twice in a row. Fuck us, Newman. Fuck us. A shame the hunters have plenty of evidence for the elephants being real. Which is strange, since supporters of Bigfoot don't seem able to kill him with all the firepower in the world. And hey, maybe we killed them off. You have to admit, at least they would be in the realm of the natural, even closer than aliens. However, like a god, he seems to be shy. And I mean, like, world hide-and-seek champion, only second to the big G-man himself. And for such a distant second. And for such a large guy, you would expect some pretty large fossils. Instead, we're stuck with sightings from all over the globe, around one, you NASA shills, of different vague ape-like creatures and footprints which may or may not be real. I'd also love to know how Bigfoots give births with such a large head. Kinda given a sort of apologetic for, but did they have hips to die for? Because literally, oftentimes, animals die trying to get through someone's hips. Look, I'm open to a Bigfoot being real, and I'd be the first to interview them. Where's my microphone? Hello, Sasquatch. The mic is all yours. And I'd be the first to interview them, or more likely get visas.
Inviting all Bigfoot, do a stream where you just
inviting all Bigfoot. Bigfoot, the link will be in chat soon. You'll be fine. However, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Until that time, I'll be riding on the Loch Ness Monster. Thank you. And woohoo! So how are you tonight, James?
Yep. I'm good. I saw you in the debate. Did you get to watch the whole thing or most of it?
I got to watch probably 90% of it, almost all of it. And so are you ready to hunt for some terribly big feet?
Yeah, so I didn't really prepare a lot. This was kind of a last-minute topic change, but because the debate was on today, and I didn't get to watch the whole debate because of my work schedule and everything, so I'm just going to make a few comments based on what I did see. And I really liked the debate. From what I saw, I think Erica is a good interlocutor for a topic like this. And I even forget the gentleman's name, but the doctor, he's obviously very smart. He obviously has spent a lot of time doing research into this. And this debate went way better than I thought for most Bigfoot type debates, where, you know, the person who's arguing for the pro side, they have to do weeks and weeks. Sometimes, you know, he's obviously been studying this for years, but you have to do so much preparation. You got to learn so much. But the person on the skeptic side could set their alarm clock for 5 minutes before the debate, just slide on over to the chair, log into the debate, just hand wave away whatever the guy says as insufficient, and win the debate. 90% of people will think that that person did a better job. So it's kind of a thankless task in a way, um, trying to argue for the things like this, because at the outset we all admit, hey, there's not strong evidence of there being a Bigfoot. We all understand that. We know that, because if there was strong evidence, we wouldn't be debating whether they exist or not. We'd be trying to learn more about them, but we don't have that. And with, I'd say, I don't know, 75% of skeptics, it seems like that the only evidence they would be willing to accept is an actual Bigfoot, a body. Bust out the Bigfoot. Anything else is not going to be sufficient. And that may be the correct position. They may not exist, but it's something I find to be an interesting topic. There's so much about the natural world that we don't know, and there's so many things. We've really only been doing hard science for a few centuries. There's obviously so much more that we have to learn about what is out there. And but yeah, I mean, at this point, it's hard to say there's not conclusive evidence, but absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. But it does make you think that if there was a sustained population of them, that you would expect to find some type of evidence, unless it's some kind of crazy life form that we've never encountered before, which you can't really test for that. So it's pure speculation. But so yeah, I thought the debate was good. I'm not a proponent of Bigfoot. I haven't really spent much time researching on it, but I do find it interesting to listen to these debates from the underdog's perspective and see how they're going about it, because that's a monumental task of taking something where the evidence is not very strong, and that the skeptic position is just so easy to take that it's not easy. It's very easy not to be convinced by evidence that's not that strong. So, yeah. Praise God. Praise the G-Man. Yeah. Amy might have stepped out for a second, so I'm.
Oh nope! I double shot it myself.
Double tapped
Those
it.
damn zombies. And okay, thank you so very much, James. And with
You put the link in yet?
that, I'm gonna put it in there right now. We are going to go into our open mic portion in a second. You guys can midnight rant with us and tell us, is there evidence for Bigfoot? And okay, that link is going in right now. Yeah, but I thought it was a good debate.
Definitely. And Erica, the reason Erica's not one of those, because she will actually take the time to actually look into the information and try to understand it, instead of just trying to come up with a short, piffy, way to shut the whole thing down, the way some interlocutors would.
And I would say, I wanted to say this, one of my early notes with Erica, which I love so much, which I think Pine Creek is also so good. They both implore I hear you, I agree with you, let me tell you where you're wrong. And so they are very good at it. It seems like hearing the arguments, at least it appears to be like almost strongmanning it in their head, but still trying to push back. Does that even make sense?
I think I understand what you mean. It's like it's just different approaches. It's like the debate that Ken Hovind did with Maddie, where she was very, like a teacher. She was like trying to explain to him where he's getting it wrong, versus somebody like Aaron Ra, who's just going to pulverize Ken Hovind into the pavement. It's two different approaches, but they both kind of work. Depends on the person who's delivering it.
So I'll go over the link is now in chat, but one of the things, the biggest olive branch that he gave me was in the aliens question, when he very much wrangled it to like the natural world, which is the flagpole I need when having this conversation. I need that minimally. Was like, I am not saying supernatural. I am not saying an alien. Not that either of those things aren't real. I'm not making that claim. I'm just saying you're getting it closer and closer. And okay.
I mean, yeah, if you're going to build your hypothesis on that, something that's untestable, that it's not really going to be taken seriously because, I mean, we don't have any evidence of anything like that. So
Yes, and I still have it. It opens up more questions than answers. I know he gave his, in my apparent apologetic, that it could be stealthy, and it's true. It could be packs of giant stealthy primates. I just have such a problem with that like, sure, elephants could sneak up on you. Sure, apes could sneak up on you. But generally speaking, they sneak up on you, and then you see them. Then you have an encounter with them. Like, you get either good or bad. Like,
yeah,
the problem is that never happens. Like that. So sure, it could. Could it be that there are these stealth, and then they go back? Sure, but
I mean, I would have to say that if there is something to the phenomenon, if it is legitimate, that if we ever do find an answer, it would probably blur the lines between the natural physical world and the question mark fringes of our ability to reason and understand. I don't think if there is anything to it that would be just a regular old hominid that that somehow we didn't detect all these years. It would have to be something a little different than that. Maybe something we don't even have the ability to adequately explain right now, but the thing is that's untestable, and it's pure speculation, and that's not how science works. You can't just speculate. You can't make a proposition that's untestable and unfalsifiable. So that's what the realm of religion does. They just make their God claim, so he's unfalsifiable, so you can't prove he's not there, but it doesn't do much to prove that he is there.
Well, yeah, and you're right that the skeptic has, easier. And I'll say this, and then we'll let Pat in. We'll switch into open mic. But the skeptic is always going to have. You could call it the easier position, but we shouldn't have the burden of proof for a reason, right? It should always be that when you're putting forward a claim and something that is basically saying would, in my opinion, shake up so much of what we know, not saying it's not true once again, because shaked up, that happens in science all the time. But yeah, only just means that I have a high bar. That's all I am saying. And okay, with that. And okay, with that, are you ready? Is your body ready, James? Is your body?
Yeah, I'm ready. Who do we got? We got Pat back there.
With that, we are switching into our
all right, our fly is open. We are open mic.
Yeah. We are midnight ranting on evidence for Bigfoot. I hope you are doing well. And what are your thoughts about either the topic or the debate or the topic itself?
Well, the topic is one that's been, people have been talking about for quite a while, especially in the Pacific Northwest where I'm currently living. You can always see one or two bumper stickers as you drive down any freeway here saying Bigfoot's real. But much like any scientific claim, you have to have a body of evidence to support it. And there simply isn't a body of evidence to support it. And I actually think Erica did a really good job entertaining Dr. Meldrum's, I guess, opinion.
Very much agree.
But he is making numerous assumptions. And What I had a problem with is he kept talking about this person, that person that had verified his work without naming these people. Because I was looking for any and all backstage when the debate was going on, information regarding his body of work. And what I saw were a lot of speculation. I looked into Dr. Milburn's other publications, and actually I ended the debate with less respect for him than when I started. And I saw that he had an apologetic style, not only with, in the field of anthropology, but he has an apologetic style in the field of theology. So apologetics seems to be his wheelhouse for both.
Really?
Yeah, he co-published a paper. Give me a second. Co-published a paper in 2003 in the Journal of Mormon Studies. I'm sorry, Journal of the Book of Mormon Studies with Trent Stevens.
He's a Mormon?
He's actually got both his undergraduate and his master's from BYU.
The plot thickens.
Defending the position that non-detection of genetic markers from Semitic people. Remember, Mormonism claims that the Americas were colonized, or at least in partially colonized by Semitic people, Hebrews, that migrated in magical boats to America and then founded massive civilizations and were largely responsible for the population of the Americas. He defended, and
they left no evidence. Go figure.
Right, and that's his paper, basically saying that he defends the theological position despite the evidence. And I just wanted to read one paragraph, if you guys can allow me to. It's the closing paragraph.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the closing paragraph of his paper. According to God's promise to Abraham, remnants of the house of Israel have been scattered among all nations of the earth, like leaven in bread. Whereas leaven adds the quality of the bread to much leaven, to the point where it can be tasted in the bread, decreases the quality. We all benefit from our genetic and memic heritage from the house of Israel, but we probably will never find genetic traces of the leaven in most nations of the world. We probably will never find a genetic marker for the children of Lehi. Those are the people who supposedly came to America. From the children of Abraham, even for the children of God. Ultimately, we are impressed by the realization that the fundamental question of the veracity of the claims of the Book of Mormon lies beyond the keen of modern DNA research. The final implication of the book as a witness of the prophetic calling of Joseph Smith and as another testament of the divinity of Jesus Christ remain within the realm of faith and individual testimony. So despite lack of any evidence, he still claims the Book of Mormon being true when DNA evidence, generations of DNA studies on indigenous people of North and South America were unable to even hint at any confirmation. This is absent a body of archaeology which disproves it and counters many, if not all, the claims given by the Book of Mormon. Dr. Meldrum is an apologist, and he's kind of the worst kind because he has a PhD.
And I really, really dislike that. Like, I know when they make that claim, that at least the people nowadays, I assume good intention that they don't know the history of all that, but it really annoys me that he did like a page one rewrite, and he's just like, yeah, some darkish people here, some darkish people there. Trust me, they all let's just do the connection. And it's like, really? I don't think you can go like that.
Joseph Smith?
Yeah, he just did. He's like, yeah, Native Americans were Jews, and they were the true Israelites and all this. And it's just like, not only that, not to get into too much of I know that's Peter. I'd be willing to put money. Bigfoot apparently is backstage.
Well, we did send out the invitation.
Break my train of thought. I'm so sorry. Exactly, and you feel free to join our link. We are Midnight Ranting on Is There Evidence for Bigfoot? but just this whole, and he does this for a whole bunch of claims, and he reminds me, Joseph Smith, very much of L. Ron Hubbard. I just get the very much same feel, and I understand that the people in it are more like victims, but it doesn't stop me from being angry at concepts like that. And okay, thank you so very much, Pat. And I'm going to continue saying hi to people in chat, and then we are going to add in Bigfoot. We apparently found him. We've been searching. Why even have the debate? See, it should have been right there. What were you going to say, James?
Oh, who's back there? Just Bigfoot? That's it?
Bigfoot himself. And okay. And ooh, look at that. It does that thing when comments. We're learning, folks. And that's okay. I'm doing it anyway, so I can say hi to everybody and say it hi to everybody out there in chat. It's making sense, but no, I'm just actually. I would say kind of tall. It might be my cousin.
Maybe we can get Kenneth Hovind to come on, and he can tell us how big their member would be. Would it be a foot and a half long?
15. Holy moly.
Yeah.
Well, you see, now it's all making sense. Woohoo! Sending loves to both Nick, Pasta, Oz. We have a whole band of misfits. And okay, are you ready?
No, but let's bring him in anyway.
No. Woohoo! Bigfoot. How are you? And we are midnight ranting on Is There Evidence for You? Oh my goddess.
Is that Nathan Thompson? Who is that?
So how are you and what are your thoughts?
It's Oz, and I came to give
It's Oz!
demonstrable evidence that there is a Bigfoot in his pasta mic.
Dun, dun. But Pasta, we love them. I was going to say, we have evidence. It's right here. We didn't even need a debate.
No.
But oh man, that's shots fired, Pasta. That means you have to come on and get love.
All the love.
All the love. And send it out to Normalizing Atheism, who is just amazing. And Tang, the Atheist Network Group. I just have to. I'm contractually obligated. It says that where it goes contract from Satan. You would think it'd be Oz, but it's actually Satan. Funny thing.
I mean, they are kind of the same, right? Oz and Satan. They, yeah.
It happens.
Or so I've been accused. Yeah.
And okay, I'm going to start going into notes then, since we have everyone from backstage. But if you would like to join us, we are midnight ranting on Is There Evidence for Bigfoot.
Just don't use the guest towels as toilet paper like you did last time. Thank you.
Exactly. In script writing, awesome tactic called Save the Cat. Always want to connect. I thought her coming out and just saying the agnostic point, I think that's always important. You know, not saying, but as Pat would say, I think at least me and Pat are very much on, and I'm not sure so much for Bigfoot himself. We're still skeptical, but we're on very much the no. But it's not 100%. There is no, at least for me, it's not 100% certainty. As for almost anything, there's no 100% certainty. But and with that, we just added Mubarak and Soldier of Science, sending love.
Someone getting a phone call?
Yep.
No,
Sorry.
that was.
I went through my Skype on my PC. I apologize.
Bigfoot can get phone calls. You see, folks, they were tracking him the whole time. Government knows. They're lying to us. All right. But then, so she also mentioned, as stereotypically, Bigfoot would be big. And, you know, it is kind of just the bigger it is, I would say, the easier you would think. Once again, he said there's that one example he gave in the debate of an elephant being stealthy. But in my defense, elephants typically are not known for their stealthiness. That is not a trait that they normally symbolize
You
with.
kind of feel the ground rumbling anytime they're walking near you, you know?
Yes. But if you disagree with us, come midnight ranting, and we are sending Mubarak Love to join us on this rabbit hole. How are you? And what are your
Mubarak.
thoughts?
Hello. Evidence, please. That's my only thought. Is like present real evidence.
We're all out. Sorry. Fresh
Damn.
out.
Yeah, it's like that. It's frustrating. Like, believe me, I want to have a Bigfoot. Why not? It's like they're fun. The more apes, the more cousins we find, the more we know about ourselves. So go ahead, find them. But to base it on like just stories and sites that might not be sites and hoax and stuff that might or might not be real, it's always a big question mark for me. It's like present evidence, please.
It would be nice, right? And
Yeah.
thank you so very much, Mubarak. And okay, we'll talk for another second or another minute or so, and then we're going to add in Soldier of Science. Anyone have any thoughts about the debate? I thought Erica did great, as someone mentioned. She always does well on topics like this. And could we have had someone better than a primatologist? I mean,
I do not think so. I think she was the best.
I think that's why she wanted to come on, yeah.
yeah, I would say that's probably a thing.
Because that's true. You would need. There's so many things that you would need to do. You know, you would need to find an evolutionary history of them. You would need to find what are they eating. I mean, they're a creature that size would need to consume a lot of food, as you brought up. But we don't have any evidence of that. They would have to be active hunters and gatherers.
And I just want to say, Pasta, that if you're Bigfoot, then Bigfoot has beautiful hair. And I want to know exactly. Bigfoot would then have to go to like a store. So
could you rotate Bigfoot out to the back? He's got to make a phone call.
Oh, he has to make a phone call?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. See, you know,
business is good for Bigfoot.
They told us that Bigfoot has like a family and business. So we just need to hunt, maybe find a tranquilizer, maybe something like that, and we'd be good. Now he made the joke. That's actually, I want to make that point before we bring in Soldier of Science. He made the point. He was like, we can't just tranquilize their thing. And my instant thought was, why? Why can't we tranquilize it? Why would we not?
Could be
everything
allergic.
else we can. Oh, could be allergic. Exactly.
No, it's like my first thought was like, well, as human and as primitive as we could be, we were able to capture giant animals. So, like, you see, even in like Roman times, ancient times, they always had big animals around, and they were like fucking lions and tigers and shit that will actually kill us.
What did Hannibal cross the Alps with elephants?
Yeah, so why can't we now, with all the technology that we have, find, locate, capture one, study it, release it back to the wild with the rest of its family? So it's like, I don't know. And without going like beyond the natural Bigfoot, because the more you look into it, the more it starts to blend into supernatural, and at that moment people just lose me. Like one time I generally was talking with a guy who's about, I don't know, in his 50s, and he's looking me straight in the eye and telling me that Bigfoot could teleport, and that's why we cannot catch them. I was like, okay, thank you for the information.
Yeah,
Good night.
I've heard that before.
Okay, thank you.
He could teleport. He might be interdimensional, where he could pop in and out of our dimension at will, and he just manifests as a Bigfoot in our reality. I mean, it's
Will
a deep
could pop
rabbit
in
hole.
and out of dimensions?
I guess. I
Those
don't know.
Calvinists are amazing.
Could
But
Bigfoot
yeah, that's
be
just going
God?
down the rabbit hole, and there's nothing really to substantiate it. It's just speculation, you know.
Yeah.
Lions and tigers and bears, oh my, and okay, we're gonna add in Soldier of Science. Soldier of Science, we are midnight ranting on is there evidence for Bigfoot? How are you, and what are your thoughts about the debate or the topic?
Well, thank you guys for letting me join, Amy and James. Nice to see you all. And
Welcome
Pat,
back. Good to see you.
Oz, who kind of left
Good to
out.
see you too, man.
You know,
He'll be back.
I'll preamble this by saying that I don't know if you guys watched. I don't know. It was a week ago when Modern Debate did this debate about Bigfoot. I'm not sure. About a week ago, so I didn't see the recent one that you guys are talking about. But
You didn't see tonight, but you saw the one that was a week ago.
Yeah, I didn't see tonight's.
Okay.
I saw the one with Modern Debate, and in all honesty, when James was preparing for that debate, like 3 days before the actual debate, I agreed to do the debate for that, but they couldn't get other people. They couldn't get other people to come on in, and I actually didn't know anything about the subject, to be honest with you, before I started studying it a little bit. And if you watch modern day debates, if you watch that, the people who came in for the affirmative, in other words, I believe in Bigfoot, they had horrible arguments. They did not like bring in video evidence, which there's plenty of video evidence. Supposedly, there's plenty of video evidence for that. They didn't bring in the argument that there have been mammals that have been discovered in the last 10 years. For example, there's a new monkey in the Congo. There's an antelope-like creature that was discovered in the last 20 years. So there's definitely new mammals. So these arguments would be more compelling for me. They didn't bring any of that. It was more along the lines of, hey, a bunch of people have seen this type of Bigfoot, which is not compelling at all. And I think my number one argument would be most of Bigfoot, if you want to not talk about what's the frozen version of Bigfoot? I forgot what they call that.
The Yeti?
Yeah, the Yeti. Yeah, if you want to just like forget about the Yeti and you want to talk about the North American, which is mostly seen in Oregon, Washington, and probably even the East Coast mountains. In 2020, and this is probably an alarming statistic on its own, hunters in New York killed 1,400 black bears. Just in New York, which you think of as a liberal state. Probably you don't think New York is hunting. But just in New York, they killed 1,400 black bears in 2020. And that's not to mention all the other states that allow killing of bears. And so if we take into the fact that hunters killed 1,400 black bears, do you mean to tell me not one of them did a Cheney style like killing of another being, and that happened to be a Bigfoot? Like, out of the 1,400 bears that got killed in New York in 2020, not one of them was a Bigfoot. That should tell you there's no Bigfoot. I mean, basically the fact that no modern day hunter has accidentally killed a Bigfoot speaks volumes to the world.
And okay, thank you so very much.
Maybe they're made of antimatter, so the bullet just goes right through them. There you go. if you shoot them, or go around them. Space is curved, and these are smart weapons. So
Maybe.
So what you're saying is Bigfoot are curvy. So good to know.
it could be, yeah.
Ooh,
He
I
could
did
be
not
so-
see the Finding Bigfoot series.
He could be so real that he's actually not real anymore. He's transcended realness, as Amy would say.
When you say he, does that mean you think there's only one?
Yes,
Yeah,
and he is male.
yeah, and it's male.
And he's eternal.
But I mean, have you seen the video of the Bigfoot with the baby Bigfoot swinging from the tree?
No.
Oh yeah, that video's out there.
Is it even remotely legitimate, or is it like a gag?
No, I mean it's one they believe in. It's one they believe in. It looks like I wouldn't say it looks like it, but they believe it looks like a female Bigfoot with a baby Bigfoot swinging from a tree. I mean, this is a legitimate video that you can research. This is one of their claims.
Yeah.
It looks like a monkey to me,
Yeah.
but to them, it looks like a Bigfoot.
Which is something I've never spent a lot of time on, to research. Go ahead, Pat.
Well, I'm firmly of the opinion that Dr. Meldrum and others are seeking a Bigfoot out in order to find, convert, and baptize him or her into the LDS Church.
Right. Right.
I mean, I've heard of aggressive missionaries, but this is kind of ridiculous.
Right.
They have to convert people who aren't even real.
You know why? And that's because they found out that Bigfoot was into monogamy, and they were totally against it. And they were just like, no, it's not going to happen.
Happens to us all sometimes.
Yeah.
And okay, we are midnight ranting on is there good evidence for big feet? I guess it'd be Bigfoot, but it'd really be big feet, wouldn't it? Really, kind of?
That would be the
Multiple
plural,
of them. Just like our Sandra Bullocks. Just roaming. And the link is still pinned in
Pre-Sandra
YouTube.
Bullock.
Pre-Sandra Bullock. But you can find it in YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook. You can come and join us. Kinky. And we are open. If you are pro Bigfoot, come on and share what's on your mind.
Was how did the debate do as far as viewers went? How many people were in there, Amy, when you were watching?
It was okay. They're between 200 or 300. People weren't sold on Bigfoot, but it was still a good debate, I think. It wasn't a dumpster fire, so it was a successful conversation, and Erica's not one to light dumpster fires, though.
No, not at all.
Yeah, modern day debate is one of the channels that I don't keep up with chat. I just ignore it.
It can get a bit
Bigfoot country.
Yeah, debates in general, you don't want to be on the chat. But I'm always thinking about, well, not always, whenever this subject comes up, thinking about not just how much food and waste they will be producing as Bigfoot walking around, but do they die?
Yeah.
If they die, what they do with the bodies? Do they bury them, hide them? Do they burn them? And then where are those bodies, fossils, or even just recent dead?
Yeah, not only that, but I mean, we obviously have technology where we have thermal cameras and thermal lenses. So if you're anybody, I mean, it's not like the Amazon forest, which is declining, but the forests in Northern America are far smaller. So if you have technology where you can see the heat signature of beings in the forest, definitely the largest primate being that exists, which would be a Bigfoot, would stand out, right? I mean, you would see that, and let alone
You would
like you
think.
said, let alone like you said, the body or the the feces of it. And I mean, again, I didn't see the debate tonight, but I did prep work for a debate I was going to do on modern debate, and there was obviously an extensive research done on DNA evidence of hair samples that were given, and none of them were DNA samples of anything different than deer or other things that we know exist. And these were reputable Bigfoot hunters that presented this evidence. And it all got shot down. Every single one of it. Scat, hair, all the DNA samples shot down by actual legitimate scientists.
Imagine that.
Imagine.
Yeah, and I remember watching a documentary about Yetis, and they supposedly someone killed one, stuffed it, kept it somewhere in a bunker for a long time until this one scientist was able to get to it, and they did some tests and take some hair and DNA test, and they found it's some sort of a white or like a bear, but that like the DNA matched a bear, an ancient bear that like pre oh I cannot remember what years like how old it is, but supposed to be an ancient bear that lived in the region that might have some remnants or some bears living there, and they are white. But I remember at the same documentary, they, as usual, they always connect between the Yeti and the Bigfoot, and they were talking about DNA, the same thing about the DNA, and they were talking about bears and boar, like wild boars,
Sure.
because both of them have darker, longer hair that they and and if you see a bear standing and they are tall, long enough, they could scare someone thinking, well, that's Bigfoot there.
And
Yeah, no.
okay, guys. Oh, were you about to say make a point? Because we got two people backstage.
Oh boy.
No, go for it, Amy.
Okay, thank you
Who do we got?
guys so very much. We'll go back into open conversation
Who's
in a
on deck?
second. But Tiktaalik, we are midnight
Tiktaalik.
ranting on is there evidence for God?
You mean Bigfoot?
Big guys did it so much. Oh my goddess. Evidence for Bigfoot. As much evidence for Bigfoot as
Well, they are similar.
not
Yeah.
supernatural.
Maybe
They are
Bigfoot is
similar.
God.
There you go. And what are your thoughts about
So
big
I'm-
feet, more specifically?
I mean, on the internet, or no, I'm old. I don't remember all my grandchildren, but like I don't think a primate so big and a biped could really be hidden so long and so consistently. I think the debate brought some interesting arguments, but not really any evidence.
Okay. Thank you so very much. And I agree.
Who's next?
And that's true. We'll just go right along. Jason.
I thought Jason might come out for this one. I thought that would.
We are
Get his
midnight
attention.
ranting on is there good evidence for big feetsies, as Anshar points out. How are you, and what are your thoughts about the debate or the topic?
Hey, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we
Okay.
hear you.
Okay, just checking. Oh, I don't even know where to go with this because obviously, I mean, I don't think Bigfoot exists, but clearly lots of people do. And lots of people think that, that there's ample evidence. And I kind of chalk it up to, I'm more interested in why people think that Bigfoot exists, not is there evidence that Bigfoot exists, etc. I think it goes in the line of, aliens and, all the different components, flat earth, these concepts that people want to latch onto for whatever reason, given lack of education or, just a variety of reasons, the kind of the social aspects of our society right now that let people conglomerate into groups and kind of reinforce their own ideas, the QAnon, all these kinds of things. I'm not surprised that these aspects of Bigfoot aren't like rising their head more. I'm not sure if it's more frequent now than it has been in the past. So I'm more interested in that. I don't think there's any like legit evidence. And one interesting aspect is there's probably more evidence potentially for Bigfoot than there is for God. So, but anyways,
sure. I mean, there's video evidence,
Bigfoot
right?
doesn't kill as many people either, so he's at least got
Yeah,
that going for him.
Bigfoot doesn't have his book that's been transmitted inerrantly since the beginning of time.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, maybe he does. We just haven't found it yet.
I'm sure there are people that have like that would say, you know what? I might have some video of Santa Claus. I might have video of like the devil dog in New Jersey. There are all these myths of like things like this throughout history. And the only other thing I would add is nowadays everybody has a camera. Like, how come we're not getting more like 1080, iPhone shots of Bigfoot? Everybody walking around's got a camera. So where are those videos? So.
No, I was just agreeing with you that there's more evidence for Bigfoot because of the video evidence, because we don't see video evidence of God.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Even if you don't believe in the video evidence, which I don't, I don't believe in any of the video evidence of Bigfoot, but there is more evidence.
I mean, if there is evidence, if there video evidence, there should be corroborating evidence that, when all put together, provides a story as to what Bigfoot is, where it exists, like what Erica was saying, its migratory patterns, how it survives in the wild, why we, we should find all kinds of evidence that would suggest that, but we don't. So,
right. I agree.
So that's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so very much, Jason. And yeah, you would expect a little bit more evidence for all the claims.
If I could have a second, I have a question for Jason because of his background. So I pulled up the published works by, at least book-wise, for Dr. Meldrum. The titles are Sasquatch, Legend Meets Science, 2007. 2011, Who Are the Children of Lehi? DNA and the Book of Mormon. And the only other title that he has published is Mosby's Dissector for the Rehabilitation Professional, Exploring Human Anatomy, 2009. And that's a textbook. Appears to be something for students because he does teach anatomy and physiology. I just think I kind of want to get. I don't want to degenerate. I don't want this to degenerate into an ad hominem.
Right.
But when that's a body of someone's scholastic work that you can reference through a word search and trying to buy or name search and try to find this book, I think that's problematic for just credibility in general. And I'm worried about the institution that granted him his PhD.
I don't know where he got his degree from. I know I think he's at Idaho State. So yeah, I mean, certainly looking to somebody's like kind of scholarship in a particular field, you would think that if he is, truly scientifically interested in some of these facets, that you would find other publications that may not even be related to Bigfoot, but that would be related to other biological facets, and that he would have kind of an extensive set of literature in that area. But it seems like that he doesn't, but I'm not surprised because it's probably extremely difficult to get any of this kind of stuff published. But the reason it's difficult to get published is because I'm imagining that those hypotheses and the structure around that supporting evidence is pretty weak, and no like high impact journal is going to want to publish that if it's not clearly delineated and supported. So I have a feeling that like he found a niche to latch onto. It got him some popularity,
Right.
and he's not so concerned about his H index. You know, he's more interested in, can he get on the History Channel, or can he, you know, which is not, but which to each their own. I'm not
Right.
slamming that. You know, that's, you know, obviously I don't know if he's tenured or not. So
Well,
I mean, again, this is kind of why I argued that probably the best defense for someone who believes in a Bigfoot as a biologist would be to say that as humans, we are constantly finding new creatures, right? I mean, you know, in the last 10 years, there's been several mammals that have been discovered that we didn't know about before. But there's a difference between finding a new monkey species in the Congo versus the largest primate species that would exist right now. Like right now, that we absolutely have no idea about. So you really have to get into this defensive position of, hey, that this largest primate is able to sneak around without being noticed by humans. It's able to exist without making itself known, whether it's through its decomposition, whether it's through its food, whether it's through its feces, whether it's through all of these things. It's able to still hide, and it must be able to do so because it's low in numbers.
yeah.
I mean, you would think that, I mean, if you kind of like step back and think about like, what do researchers do to evaluate new species and to like interrogate like the ecological landscape, biological landscapes for that it's oftentimes fairly sophisticated computational models that utilize like unique efforts of evaluating DNA. And you know, you can imagine like, well, what if I did water samples from all over these places, and I sampled DNA, or I took like soil samples of across like 5,000 locations across the West, and I sampled all the facets of DNA in that, and I associated those with the different species I found, and then I did really intensive mathematical modeling to evaluate which ones are not identified in the known set of species, and then where do they fall in the phylogenetic trees, and that would identify like what kind of animals they are. That could be like, look, we found this hominid subspecies, whatever, that we can place in the tree that is in this area. We don't, so it creates like a mathematical quantitative hypothesis that those things might exist. Just to say, I have some video of something that I found, and I got some footprints that I don't know what they are, and I got, you know, and I got some hair that is, you know, that it's a little suspect. So,
And so before anyone responds, I just want to show some comments and send out love to Erica if you're there in chat. We thought you did awesome. I thought it was a great debate.
It was.
And
It was good.
yeah, like I said, I don't think there could have been a better, more qualified person to do this debate.
And
so
she
it was
really
great.
listens to the other side, sees what they have to say, and then considers it. She just doesn't hand wave it away. And
Yeah, she actually listens, and I thought she gave great responses to a lot of, I think, Dr. Jeffrey's comments. And I will say, so brain bugs, so we'll stay on topic with bugs. Ants versus A Bug's Life. Go. There you go. Bigfoot is a direct descendant of huge primate, gigantic piggy nuts. Okay, I'm not sure what that. Okay, sending love to everybody in chat, and if you want to see your comment read on screen, feel free by tagging me at Amy Newman, whether you are on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. And we are going to keep on adding people. If anyone would like to join us, the link should be
Keep
pinned
adding.
in YouTube chat. And Pieta, we are midnight ranting on
shit.
is there
Shit
good
just got
evidence for some big feeties? Ooh, and Erica just joined backstage, so we're gonna make. So you're gonna. I would. What's the word? Is piffy, but we love you, Peter. How are you doing? And what are your thoughts about the debate or the subject?
First of all, you're using OBS, aren't you?
Getting there.
Nice.
I should be.
Nice. I noticed a few things, so we need to have a chat soon. But yeah, I jumped in because I spoke to Bigfoot yesterday, and I regularly speak to him as I produce his shows. So I know for a fact that there is 100% conclusive evidence that he exists. He is just misnamed. And this, I'm going back to this, and I just was on a stream where I mentioned this. I'm going back to this. This was, I think, a few decades ago, where he was traveling to a certain city where he had to give a talk, and his car broke down, and he started to see if he could hitchhike the last part of the ride that he had. It's late. I can't find my words. But so
how my brain is too.
Yeah, he was hitchhiking. No one picked him up, and then when he finally got to the town that he was going to speak at, the next morning, he looked at the local paper, and the local paper described that Bigfoot had been sighted, and it was exactly where he was trying to hitchhike. And for people who do not know this, I'm obviously talking about Onra. And this is a true story. You can check up on that. He was mistaken for Bigfoot. So I think we've got a conclusive
Did he do
answer.
birthday parties? Did he do kids parties as Bigfoot?
I don't know.
That would be a good gig, right?
Yeah. But so it happened, and it also gives you some insight in Bigfoot sightings. Because
how many of those does Arnra account for? Probably a good chunk of them.
For one that he 100% knows that he accounts for is one, because that showed up in the local paper the next day. And people were really afraid of Bigfoot standing that close to the road. So yeah, maybe people should
it all makes sense.
Start cross-examining the Bigfoot sightings and see where they line up with Aaron's travels across the USA. Who knows? Might be an interesting study.
And okay, thank you so very much, Peter.
And also, I love the artwork so far. Great job.
Oh, thank you so very much. I was gonna say it's not giving you vertigo that I'm going back and forth. It looks nice that it all fits.
No, there are a few, and this is
I gotta get tricks for it.
Just the tech stuff, but there are a few issues that I can really help you with. And
I think that's probably what OBS is good for. So I should probably be using OBS to be using all these different, wonderful overlays.
Yeah, it looks great. I love it. It looks so much better than what you had. It's awesome.
Okay, good. Well, thank you so very much, Peter. And okay, with that, we are going to add Erica in, and then we will go back into open conversation.
I don't have my soundboard, but someone would say
the closest I've gotten to believing in Jesus.
Take that ugly fucker off my screen, please.
No, we must. And thank you so very much, Erica. We are midnight ranting on is there good evidence? I think I'm adding the good in there. Is there evidence for Bigfoot? How are you, and what are your thoughts about the debate or the subject?
Welcome to the show.
Oh, I think I might be a little big-footed out for the evening. But yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be hanging out. I'm just just decompressing, relaxing. The question: is there good evidence for Bigfoot? I am not 100% convinced, but it certainly is a fun subject to chat about, and I think that the Bigfoot community's got a real winner with Jeff. I can't really think of anybody who would be better qualified to be kind of talking about it, but I mean, he'll be the first one to tell you that as much as he's kind of into it, it's not like it's conclusive.
Let me ask you this, Erica: is the Bigfoot community, does it serve a purpose much like Flat Earth, where it really is just a club of like-minded people, regardless of whether it's true?
Serve a purpose like Flat Earth. That's a sentence that I can't compute.
Yeah, I think it's a really good. I think that's a really good question. I think in some circles, yes. I think it's got to be. It's a bunch of bros who chill out and go Bigfoot hunting with a 6-pack. I mean, it's a nice way to kind of build a community with other people. And you guys, I think I heard you guys right when I was popping in. We're talking about how the internet allows for people to kind of make connections in places and kind of congregate in places that they previously may not have been able to. But I mean, that being said, like back when people were first entertaining the idea of Bigfoot, there were folks who found it compelling for whatever reason. I think that you can't say the same for Flat Earth. Like, I think the people who find Flat Earth compelling, like by their very nature, they kind of have to lack they have to be either ignorant or uneducated. But like, I think that if anything kind of showed tonight, and really in a lot of different things like Bigfoot, or certain religions for that matter, you can have people who are highly educated, highly intelligent, and they find the support for something compelling for whatever reason. I mean, I certainly can't explain everything that
No, I mean, the only thing I would disagree with you is that I think there's probably also highly intelligent people that fall into the Flat Earth scheme as well. Just because they latch on to one or two things about it that they can't,
perhaps you're right. Yeah, perhaps you're right.
Yeah, but otherwise, I completely agree.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough.
And I wanted to ask you something, Erica, that was big to me, is that Pat, and I'm going to add him back in a second, said that he's a Mormon, and he's a Mormon theologian. And, almost all of my questions, especially in conspiracy theories, I normally try and ask it posed in a way so I could admit if they have a religious underpinning. And I didn't do that this time, which I regret now, knowing that he seems to have some kind of connection to Mormonism. So I guess my question would be, did you know that he seems to... there seems to be, I don't know, this weird connection, whether it is to conspiracy theory thinking, because you're right, Dr. Jeff is a smart guy with actual, because some guy buying a DVD might have a little bit different, but he's an actual academic, so
Funny you should mention him, because he premiered one of his DVDs today on his channel, because some big guy from Texas seemed to have pissed him off regarding lies in the textbooks.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting deal. I mean, you want to talk about Jeff, like Dr. Meldrum, like I've cited his conventional work in papers before, like in just write-ups and stuff like that for school. I mean, he does great conventional work. And I mean, he finds, like, again, that's all. Like the fact that it's him that's backing the Bigfoot stuff. It's like I can definitely pose questions with things like, okay, well, what about the fossil record? What about the metabolism? Where's the body? What like speculating about the bigger issues. But when he starts talking about the foot morphology stuff, like I'm totally clueless. But I'm inclined to think that since his conventional work is good, that he kind of knows what he's talking about. I mean, I try to be consistent with my trust in the experts, which kind of leads me to wonder, okay, like what the heck is going on? Like that doesn't mean that it's a Sasquatch, right? It just means something strange is happening. Maybe you've got some really excellent hoaxers. Maybe you've got some people with some really massive, weird-looking feet. Or maybe there's a North American hominid. I don't know. I think it's inconclusive, and that's kind of my whole stance on the deal. I think you're right. I think with most conspiracy theories, Bigfoot kind of lies outside of that circle, I would imagine, because of its inherent ties to anthropology and like human evolution. But yeah, most conspiracies, they do tend to have a kind of religious slant to them. A classic one is all like the kind of spirit science woo and pretty much anything attached to that, from astrology to ghosts and paranormal stuff. There always tends to be a connection. I think that's a fair statement.
Interestingly enough, though, I think that where you're right, classically, that's probably true. With QAnon, that has kind of proven to be different, where a lot of us would think that traditionally it's right-wing people who tend to be religious that fall into this QAnon trap. It's now even left-wing transcendentalists, and the people that not necessarily believe in God, but believe in an occult type of belief, or a transcendentalism or a spiritualism type of belief, are also tend to follow into this conspiracy theory. So
well, you get those folks that are like, the truth is relative, and it's like it depends on what kind of truth you're talking about, right? I mean, like personal truths are certainly relative, but then you start talking about things like empirical science, and then it's like, okay, you're playing a dangerous game at that point. And I think usually it's kind of the woo types that came out of like the 70s that are kind of proposing that, right? They're the ones that came out and they're like, it's just your opinion, man,
Yeah, I don't know, I don't want to say the coexist. Actually, before I say something, I completely agree. And then I just wanted to ask one more thing, Erica, and then we'll add in Bird. You made what I thought was a great point, was just, it's a tautology, but Bigfoot's big. And there doesn't seem to be many you would expect large fossils. You would expect a sort of species to just leave some sort of remains, especially something, in my opinion, so fresh and stuff like that, or maybe even old.
No, you're totally right. I mean, there's a huge taphonomic bias, like how things die and preserve, towards things that are big. There's a reason we've got so many dinosaurs and proboscideans, and our rodent fossil record is comparatively very poor. And I think that's a kind of a point worth noting, particularly if, as Jeff said, this migration occurred 100,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago. That's gobsmackingly recent. And, if he's really proposing too, and we touched on this a little bit in the debate, that they evolved from something like Gigantopithecus or Paranthropus, both decidedly social species, if their lineage has anything to say about it. Well, then these guys are moving in groups. So, someone's got to be falling in some pit somewhere where you can find a tooth or a humerus or a piece of a skull or something. Just something that's going to lend itself to, holy shit, there's actually a hominin that used to live here in North America that isn't human.
They're like Ken Ham's kangaroos that went to Australia without leaving a trace on the way.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't think I can do creationism tonight, but yes.
And Erica, you brought up a good point. And, I don't know if you were listening when I said that before your debate, I was actually going to do a modern day debate on Bigfoot that happened. I don't know if it was a week ago or so. And the two gentlemen that were in the affirmative position, they didn't really bring up a lot of evidence about Bigfoot. And one of the first things that when I was researching Bigfoot was, the first question I came up with was, did Bigfoot ever exist? And that answer for most people is yes, and that's Gigantopithecus. It was a creature that existed, I don't know what, 40 to 50 million years ago. And so to me, I thought that they would really come up with the argument that this thing did exist at one point and it's still alive. And they totally said no, that the modern day Bigfoot is not Gigantopithecus. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, see, and I think that that's very, very strange. I know one of the guys who you debated. I chatted with him on Conspiracy Cat's channel, Pat. I forget his last name. He's a really, really kind guy for sure, great guy. But yeah, I mean, it's evolutionary theory, right? Like, you're going to have a progenitor lineage that's going to lead to these organisms. I found it very surprising that Jeff proposed Gigantopithecus instead of Paranthropus, which is what I always thought seemed really intuitive. I mean, it's something that's already on 2 feet. It's an appropriate size. It could easily get, slightly bigger, and then we could chalk the, massive sizes of Bigfoot up to, kind of hysteria in the moment. And you've got something that's, in my opinion, much more plausible than scaling down something like Gigantopithecus, which is enormous. It's a pongid. It's got, because it's a pongid, it's probably got big flanges. You're having to redo a lot of the architecture in the face and in the body. And Jeff was arguing today kind of that, perhaps Gigantopithecus was already bipedal and had this, a bipedality kind of from the start as it came down from the trees. And I think that's a little bit difficult. And he would know probably more than I would about the foot aspect of it. But to my knowledge, it's very difficult to get a biped much taller than some of the humans that have lived. You start getting too big and you're putting enormous pressure on like the circulatory system, having to pump blood up that high. So I find it hard to believe that we've got like a 10-foot tall Gigantopithecus wandering around on 2 feet. It just becomes a little bit unfeasible to me. So then that leaves Paranthropus, a tool user who has gigantic molars and, would have had to wander up through Europe and then across the Bering Strait. And I have a very hard time thinking that it's not going to leave a single trace of itself. Now, I guess it's possible that some of the lithics that we, attribute to the folks who first reached the New World was actually some of it was actually Paranthropus. But Jeff also takes the position that Bigfoot don't use tools, which I think is kind of strange too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how could modern apes and chimpanzees use tools, but Bigfoot doesn't?
Yeah, I thought that was strange too. I wanted to ask him about that. But I feel the need to say this because he's genuinely really good in his conventional work. There is no denying that he's a good scientist in anthropology for sure. I wonder though if I don't know if this is true. I've simply read accounts from folks who are kind of in the field with him that they've accused him of being more robust in his conventional work than in his Bigfoot work. And I don't know if that's true, and I don't get the intention from him, but I wonder because I think everybody's guilty of doing that sometimes.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great doctors who believe in God, right?
He doesn't. He
Well,
doesn't
what's
have a
the head of the
publication
human
after-
genome?
He doesn't
Oh,
have a
just-
publication
yeah,
after
okay.
2000. He has 0 pubs after 2000. I don't see any publications in the last 20 years.
He should have some comments on quite a few different locomotion studies. I know he worked on the Trichios prints with Esteban Sarmiento.
I mean,
but original work.
Yep.
I mean, I see a book review in 2000, and then I see several from 1999, 98, 97. I see pubs, but I don't see anything after that. So
Here, I'll pull our Trichios. Because I actually really enjoyed that paper.
I don't even think it's worth really digging into that. I mean, you made a great point that you can be great at some areas of science, but then be delusional about another aspect, or you can have a spiritual aspect of your life. You can be a great neuro scientist and then believe that the pyramids were created for grain, for example. I'm just saying, throwing that out there.
Okay, I
Do
see
you-
some.
You
I'm
want to
Remember
say
King.
further, maybe? He's been back.
Well, yeah. Well, I wanted to make just 2 points. Just I agree with Erica in that I think that people can parcel themselves out really well sometimes. Now it depends on how supernatural it is. Like I think the head of the Human Genome Project, I think he did good scientific research, and yet I don't think he did so when he saw 3 waterfalls. And so you have to separate those out, and it's how close, on the metric, how close is he being towards genetics research, and how close is he to waterfall? So that's just the question that I guess is hard. And then the other thing is just no. He said no tools. Really, I missed that, which is I find really weird because if it's no tools, how the hell are they hunting? Are they just hunting with their mouths and their hands? And if they are just hunting with their mouths and their hands, has there never been like an animal that got away and we're like, what are these giant ape-like teeth marks in this animal?
Yeah, so the thing about that is like chimps kill by effectively pulling their prey apart. Like they don't even use their canine teeth when they're going after colobus monkeys or duiker or something like that. And when you find the remains of something like that, you're just like, oh, okay, this was definitely a chimp. Like something just ripped this to pieces. And usually they hunt in groups and things like that. So I think that's a really great point. Like I wonder why we haven't found like just macerated deer carcasses, because if Jeff is correct and these things are truly omnivorous, well, it's got to be preying on something, and to that point, I think you have to have some kind of omnivory, or else this critter's having to spend literally 24/7 doing nothing but eating and fermenting the food that it's eating. I mean, gorillas spend all day long sitting around eating. That's it. That's all they do. They sit around, they eat, they mate, and then the babies play, and then they sleep, and they nest build. And the reason is because these are herbivores that are gigantic. They have a huge metabolic need. Their calorie intake is just their calorie requirements rather just incredible. And we know from the relative size of Neanderthals and from their brain case size that they probably had a higher caloric intake than we did. They probably needed 4,500 to 5,000 calories a day. And to that point, when we find their butchery sites, we find that they selectively take organs, high-calorie foodstuffs from what they kill, and they ate pretty much exclusively meat. I mean, they had some omnivory to their diet, but it just wouldn't have been conducive to survival for them. We're talking an animal that's like double that size. So how's it staying alive, metabolically speaking? I don't know.
May I add? We can compare them to like billy apes. These big chimpanzees that are very elusive. We didn't know much about them for a long time, and we still find video of them, find their nest, their communities. Locals hunt them, actively hunt them. So how can't we find a human-sized biped hominin in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, and therein lies the question, right? I mean, and I think the question that was asked, that was like, okay, well, like, is it possible that they're intentionally hiding? And then it's like, okay, well, if we're allotting them that cognition, why aren't they making tools? Why aren't they sheltering in place? Why don't we, I mean, there are some folks who in the Bigfoot community claim that these things can like utilize fire and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know. And the thing is like, I have to say, like, I think that Jeff's stuff about the footprints are interesting. They're, someone who knows a lot about footprints saying that they look like footprints. They've got dermatoglyphic ridges. They've got, aspects to topographies that are decently standardizable. Like all of that is really, really interesting, but it doesn't mean it's Sasquatch. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yes, in fact, that was one of the things I wrote down. I'm very interested. It almost sounded like he was teaching a lecture. He's like, come into my course, and I'll show you the difference between a bear, a human, and a Bigfoot track. And it was like, oh,
That sounds
okay.
like he's moving line.
Yeah.
Yeah, buy my 20 DVD set, and you can send it back, get all your money back. Okay.
So I
Carter,
didn't see the debate
You
tonight,
also
but
have to
did he show the prints of that famous guy like in the Alps or whatever who was taking
Oh
pictures?
no,
in
no,
the snow?
I don't think he finds the Shipton prints to be very interesting. Like he was pretty open about the Yeti kind of being significantly less likely in his eyes than Bigfoot. I mean, he's like, yeah,
but I mean that in the world of Bigfoot is like some of the most amazing evidence is this guy that supposedly has all kinds of photos in the Alps or
and
whatever.
yeah, that's an interesting deal. Those Shipton prints are kind of strange, but I don't think that they fall outside of the realm of bear hind prints. Like if you look at bear hind prints, they do look pretty human-like, and in the snow, I think it's much easier to kind of make that mistake than, I guess, in like soft mud where the details are preserved a little bit easier.
I mean, to me, as a novice, I just kind of thought it had to be a hoax. You know, I mean, to me, it was like if it's any kind of print, it could probably be a hoax because it's after the fact, right?
I mean, let me just say one thing, that I can appreciate this like kind of deductive approach of evaluating these kind of like trace evidence for the potential identification of an unknown species. I can understand that, but it seems that like we have zero fossil evidence. We have zero remain evidence. All we have are like trace fossils, photographs, all this speculative stuff in the same area as something that is kind of like a mythic creature. And so while I can appreciate the efforts to kind of examine this from a scientific perspective, until we actually have like any fossilized, like biologically reproducible DNA evaluated evidence or remains, etc., I think all that other work is really suspect. I think it can be fun, but I don't think it really does. I don't think it goes anywhere until we have some other like actual physical tangible evidence.
Well,
like
even
basically bust out the Bigfoot.
Yeah, I think even if it's not Squatch, which I'm not inclined to believe that it is, there's still the question of like who is going into the woods with like giant, super topographically unique like feet strapping them to work like and why are they doing that?
But Patton, like my understanding is the Patterson, whatever the guy's name's Gimli Patterson.
Patterson Gimlin film, yeah,
that guy did that. He admitted to doing that. He admitted to creating molds and making footprints. Like it's a well-known documentation that later in life, this guy came forward. One of the guys came forward and said, "This is all like I did a bunch of this stuff that faked it and did a bunch of faking." So
yeah, so the Patterson Gimlin film is it's a really interesting story. And I think that if you're at all like tangentially interested in like the whole culture even behind the Bigfoot phenomena, like that's definitely something worth looking into, because the situation surrounding that particular film is like, in some ways it feels like the perfect setup for a hoax, and in other ways it makes no sense at all. You know, particularly there are some weird aspects of like the intermembral index of the whatever the hell is in the actual screen. It depends on the frame rate, which we don't know, because Patterson didn't like take good notes on like what he was actually doing out there. And then there's the whole deal where it's like, okay, well, they went out there looking to film footprints, and they just stumbled across Sasquatch.
And they had like the best camera possible to film that.
Right. And you're like, oh, that makes a lot, like that sounds like a perfect hoax. Great. That, you know, case closed. But then at the same time, the place is in the middle of nowhere. And you know, if you're looking to go wherever to, like, let's say I want to go find the Loch Ness Monster, the place I'm going to go look is the last place someone said they saw the Loch Ness Monster. So, you know, theoretically, as Grover Krantz, another sympathetic anthropologist, said, the late Grover Krantz, that it's not that doesn't check out, but you're right. Then you've got the whole deal. If memory serves, it wasn't Patterson himself, but a friend of his who was the one who told him where to go to look for the footprints.
Yeah.
So the idea is that he then perhaps showed up in the suit and hoaxed them. But then there's a whole weird deal where I don't know that Patterson could have been in on it, because according to Gimlin, who, as far as I'm aware, is the rube in the entire situation, the dude who didn't know what's happening, or at least that's what he maintains, and he's some old dude who never made a cent off of any of it, which doesn't mean he didn't know, but it's worth mentioning. Gimlin's like, yeah, we're driving up there, and Patterson turns to him and he's like, hey, dude, if we see it, like, let's not shoot it. And so you're thinking, okay, well, that's what someone would say if their buddy was like out there in the suit,
Right.
But then when they see the thing, Patterson's like, oh, cover me, like, as in shoot the thing if it moves too close, which is also kind of weird. So there's, and oh God, and then there's all the shit with the people, a lot of folks who do biomechanics have allegedly looked at the footage and been like, it doesn't really make sense that a human would be able to cover that distance that fast. But again, it depends on the frame rate. And then there's all the graphic. I mean, I prepared a lot for this debate, as you can tell. And then there was like there was a whole host of movie makeup people, monster movie makeup people, who came out and when they were shown the footage by Patterson in that year in 1967,
it was like incredible
yeah,
work.
It's 3 years before the Planet of the Apes first Planet of the Apes film came out, which had like won awards and had groundbreaking special effects. So I'm thinking to myself, why is this hick in the middle of nowhere, like individually gluing hairs on to his buddy to scare his friend and hope to what? Like get funding for a Bigfoot documentary? Like it's not outside of the realm of the possibility. But wouldn't it just be easier to like film the tracks, like fake some tracks and film those? And that's what he went out there to do.
I think what's interesting is like you can go back through and do this kind of like analysis of the film, like and make these speculative statements about like that. Oh, they couldn't have been in a suit like that. They couldn't like. I feel like that all of that is on one side, and on the other side we got zero. We got zero fossilized remains.
Exactly.
So when people are like, oh,
which is
10,000 sightings, all these films, but not one bone.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's why.
In all honesty, I think they would have shot it. In all honesty, I think even if you're someone who is looking for this thing or looking for prints, the fact that you would now have a body of this thing to prove its existence, I think you would shoot it. I mean, it's sad to say that, but I do. I think you would kill it. I think you would try to kill it.
I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, you should look into. I mean, it's interesting to hear with these guys because Patterson died of Hodgkin's lymphoma when he was like 39, but Gimlin's still alive. So it's really interesting to like hear what they say about it. And Gimlin, if you talk to or people who've talked to him, in the past couple of years, they're like, well, what would you change about that day? And he's like, as much as I hate to say it, like this whole thing has been super toxic to me in my life.
Yeah.
So if I could go back, I would have just shot the damn thing because then people would have actually believed me.
Right. Right.
And so, but
this
here's
is the part where,
go ahead.
Yeah, this is the part where I think we have good reason to think that there's no Bigfoot. We've got rednecks running around with assault rifles all across the USA. I'm not limiting those to just the southern part.
Right.
They would have shot one. The moment there's deciding if there was a Bigfoot, they would have shot one.
Well, and here's the thing. You can sit here, and I am doing that right now. I can sit here and say, the Patterson-Gimlin film is really weird. And there are certain aspects of it that don't really make a lot of sense. But that doesn't mean that there's a Sasquatch. You know what I mean? Like, you can sit and talk about the strange aspects of it, and most of the strange aspects of it, for the record, if we knew the frame rate, we would be able to actually say one way or another.
No, and the first thing I said when I came in, and I don't know if you were here, Erica, but that's the first thing I quoted was that in 2020, 1,400 black bears were killed just in the state of New York by hunters. Yeah. 1,400. And the reason that I quote the black bears is because that's probably the most similar thing that would look like, a Sasquatch. And then the other thing I would quote is that hundreds of other hunters have been shot by hunters. So hunters have mistaken other people as deers or bears or whatever and shot them as well. And so the point is well taken. If you take 1,400 in one state in 1 year and you multiply that by all the states where hunting is allowed for bears, and then in the last 30 or 40 years, at least one time a hunter would have accidentally killed one of these things, at least once.
I mean, you would think playing the stats game that between that and like accidentally crossing roads, like someone would have hit one and it ends up on the
Exactly.
highway.
Absolutely.
But I'm always the ever optimistic. Like that doesn't, you can never preclude it, right? Not really. But that's though for those reasons I'm on the stance of like, look, like, here's the game changer for me. If tomorrow someone came out and was like, we found a Paranthropus blacki skull in the Pacific Northwest, then all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, maybe this is a cultural memory thing. Like maybe we've got people telling stories and this is, similar to Homo floresiensis. It permeated into native cultures and then people are just kind of recapitulating it. Even that wouldn't mean they're still around.
Oh, no, but you bring up a good point because obviously this legend exists in Native America, right? I mean, Sasquatch definitely exists as a legend.
Some kind of, yeah. I don't even know you can conclusively say that what they're seeing is distinct from any wild man archetype.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just concerned, as someone who lives in the Pacific Northwest in the state of Washington with nearly 8 million people, and we, have yet to find one. I'm concerned, though, that when it comes to this particular topic, each and every piece of evidence has either been debunked by mainstream science or has been questioned to the point that the amount of rehabilitation of the evidence is borderlines on special pleading in almost every case. The fact that, no offense to Dr. Meldrum, but one of his own comments was, I was called out to take a cast of a print and I used whatever water they have on hand, and it was warm water, so there's some possible problems. You just, if your evidence is factual, you just found the find of the year. Now, I mean, in my own field, if we found the one of something and we were called out to the scene of it, not only would it be just me, it'd be a team. And my team would make sure that we did whatever we needed to do to preserve that evidence. And it would be methodological, rigorous, and detailed.
I agree. I agree with the sentiment. To touch briefly on that, though, I feel the desire to clear it up. Meldrum gets like 100 calls from 100 different rednecks, and like 99% of the time it's some dog shit, like a non-entity thing. So it is, while I agree, as a scientist, you should always be prepared. I mean, we could allow that he's on an off day, but
I don't allow him that. I don't allow him that grace. I actually think upon inspection and him thinking it was genuine, because that's what he said in his own statement, that he was surprised at the quality. That's when you lock the scene down and you call out a team to handle it properly, because not only are you looking for evidence itself to be collected, but additional contemporaneous evidence which may be at the scene, hair fiber, other discarded areas. You do a systematic search of the area. I actually find his excuses, if he is a scientist, his methodology is flawed and borderline incompetent.
So the thing about the plaster situation, though, is that this was like the fact that plaster of this nature reacts with heat in such a fashion to create pseudodermoglyphic ridges. If that's not known ahead of time, then I don't know how your methodology could account for it.
Well, we're assuming that people hadn't been taking plaster casts for decades, and I know that plaster casts, first thing you do is you worry about temperature. I
mean, my understanding is that it wasn't known, just from what Meldrum said tonight. I'm by far in a way not. I mean, this was all new to me as far as the plaster and heat and pseudo dermoglyphic ridges. But if it is indeed, if what Meldrum says is true, and it is indeed the case that this was something that was not known at the time, I don't think that it's fair to say that he should have accounted, for a method. For all he knew, cold water could do it, and not hot water. I mean, if you have no idea that temperature impacts the existence of sort of anatomical-ish looking feature, I don't think you can fault him for not knowing that.
And okay, we're actually going to go back into open conversation in a second, but I want to get everyone in. Thank you, Erica, so very much. And also, I can't say it enough, I feel like you were both the most qualified person for the skeptic side, and I think you hit it out of the ballpark.
Man, Amy, thank you. So listen, hey, I don't believe in Bigfoot, but I did have a good time.
Woohoo! And okay, we'll go back into open conversation in just a second. Bird, how are you? And we are midnight ranting on evidence for Bigfoot. What are your thoughts about the debate or the subject?
What up,
Straight out of
everybody?
Revelation, Bird.
A bird,
I know.
bird, bird.
Bird.
A bird is the word.
Hey,
A bird,
everybody.
bird, bird. A bird is the word.
So we'll start off by saying I did not watch this one. Not because I don't care, but I kind of don't care, if that makes sense. I find the line of evidence very, very weak. And I have watched several of Erica's debates, and she always does an amazing job. So, kudos to you, even though I didn't watch it, but I've seen several of your debates, and they're always well put together, well thought out.
Yeah, absolutely. Offense taken. It's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, well, I watched the last one of Meldrum, and the one thing that really, really turned me off is he started talking about his book. And so that was an instant for me of, okay, he's just looking to sell a book, and then I tune out. I'm done.
Buy my DVDs, Bird.
The exact same sentiment as Daddy Ken Holvern says, buy my DVDs, buy my book. So he may be well respected in his field, and that's awesome. I mean, you speak highly of him, and I think that's great. But once people start hawking, their book, it's just something about it I think is disingenuous. But that's just my personal feelings.
Hate the game, not the player.
I did have a question for Mrs. Gutsy Gibbon. Are you familiar with the Birdopithecus yet?
The Birdopithecus?
Yep. It is a very large Sasquatch-like creature.
Ah, yes. Oh,
Yep.
no, this is new to me.
It is amazing. It's so amazing that you're actually talking to him right now.
Oh, super.
There's more evidence of Birdopithecus that you're talking to right now than anything I've heard about Bigfoot. So
It took me a second. Okay.
Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Unclean and hateful word from the Book of Revelation.
I was thinking he was going to talk about this new large bird species that is.
Well,
as big as
I am
Jacob.
fairly large. So
I
yes.
know. You had me for a second as well.
So anyway,
More to love.
yeah, that's what some say. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say, and I'm just here to learn and listen like always.
And okay, we're going to go back into open conversation in a second. Just have one more person to add. Thank you so very much, Bird. And then Simos. We are midnight ranting on is there evidence for Bigfoot? And as we learned today, multiple big feats. How are you, and what are your thoughts about the debate, the topic, as we often ask around here, tacos, any of the above?
Tacos.
Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you very much for letting me on, etc. And just to say, I think firstly, this ever since Darwin, people have been setting up these kind of hoaxes in order to aggrandize either themselves or to draw notoriety. And of course, that is basically why people go for conspiracies. So I think there's a huge overlap here between motivations for coming up with these things. And yeah, maybe there is some kind of creature that went extinct, I don't know, maybe whatever, 30, 40,000 years ago, like Neanderthals, allegedly, in North America. And of course, I think it is in geological time of such a short space that we would expect to find a lot more evidence than we do see currently for this particular, I don't know, creature, shall we say. So those are the two basic points I wanted to make. Also, I think the film that was often touted around, that I've seen many times over the years, I think can easily be ascribed to, you know, a couple of drunk guys with a cine camera. And what else are you going to do if you're in the backwoods and you've got a cine camera? You've got to come up with something to film. So I don't see why they wouldn't come up with something like this, which seems not beyond the wit of man to be able to do. And again, we're talking about a period of time when conspiracies were rife. Okay, post Second World War, you know, you could just throw you could throw a bag over just about any subject and find a conspiracy theory there, simply because of the ignorance that people had in terms of modern data collection and you know, lack of information. And I think that was breeding exactly these kinds of conspiracies. So I think there's strong motivations to believe that without a large amount of evidence forthcoming, that we could dismiss these as conspiracies. And just because a few people have said otherwise, even if they're highly educated in the area, I would just point to other conspiracies like Piltdown Man and say, well, there you go. We have reasons to believe that people are motivated to come up with conspiracy theories, despite the fact that it might be in their area or their wheelhouse. So just because that is the case, it doesn't mean we should believe. And of course, really, as a layman myself, I'm looking for consensus in the field in order to give me some idea that, you know, new theories or new ideas or new ideas which seem fanciful are real. I'm not looking to try and justify it by myself, because I just don't have that. And then secondly, the second thing, there's three things I want to say, but the second thing I wanted to say was that Peter, you ascribed to me a quote which you would have said about your particular screenshot, your avatar.
Oh, and, I like what you're saying, Simon. I agree.
I just wanted to say that no, I don't think the bird in your photo or your avatar was ugly. So
the bird wasn't. The bird wasn't. And, I get it.
The bird is never ugly.
Yeah, and the last thing then is that I just wanted to say hello to Erica, because we haven't actually spoken before. I'm the guy from sunny Roehampton, and it's not so sunny right now, but congratulations on your news of your marriage, and I'm very happy for you.
Thank you so much. Wait, you're in Roehampton?
That's correct, yes.
That's where I'm getting my master's degree from. That's where I just submitted my thesis to.
Really?
Indeed.
Congratulations. Yes. Double congratulations.
Wait, do you go to Richmond Park a lot?
And thank you, Simon.
I try to, although I've grown up here, so that's kind of like my local park.
Oh, I loved it there. I loved every minute I spent there.
Fantastic. Anyway, that's all I've got to say, so thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Simos.
Woo, Simon.
And okay, with that, we're going to do about another 30 minutes of open conversation, but it has been a very furry journey, everyone. We're trying to think if I have any more points. I was trying to take notes.
I have a question for Erica.
Sure.
Was there anything that Meldrum presented that you were like, oh, that might be a possible, or like anything that would spark your interest to dig into that deeper?
I mean, most of what he said I read about prior in his book.
Okay, gotcha.
I have his book, so I read it quite some time ago and read it most of it again prior to this debate, so I kind of knew most of what he was going to bring up, and most of the stuff again. The issue with it is that it's, to me, the best of the best is going to be some of those prints, which again could potentially be hoaxed, and the film, which could potentially be hoaxed. So it's like, there's just too much up in the air, I think.
So there was nothing that you found new that he talked about tonight. I guess that would be my next question.
I mean, we had some fun conversations about conventional paleontology here and there, but nothing really with relation to Bigfoot. No.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that.
I mean, my question is just to anybody or just the entire group, whenever there's this topic of Bigfoot and they want to trot somebody out who's got a PhD in this, that's doing work in it, supposedly, it seems like it's always this Jeff Meldrum guy. So where are all the Bigfoot researchers? Where are all the people doing this kind of work? Where are all the publications? I mean, are there actual scientists doing actual scientific work in this area? Are there? I mean, I'm not talking about just somebody doing a YouTube blog or something like that. I mean, are there people like that? I mean, Erica, have you run across a number of people like that?
So historically, there used to be more of them. Grover Krantz, a pioneer when it comes to Neanderthalensis work, he thoroughly entertained the idea. You've got a famous primatologist in Jack Napier. He entertained it, although interestingly enough, while he thought that a relic hominin in North America was something that was feasible, he thought the Patterson-Gimlin film was fake. And these, Napier, to my knowledge, is still around. I think he worked at the Smithsonian. He's a Smithsonian primatologist, a curator of their museum, if memory serves, or of their collection, primate collection. So there used to be more folks that took it seriously, but I'll tell you this much. If I was interested in Bigfoot and thought that, it was something feasible, I wouldn't get into it in this climate. No one would ever take you seriously. It's like career suicide. I wouldn't touch it.
Erica, let me ask you this. Do you think the Patterson film, do you think that's probably the one piece of evidence for you that you might go, you know what, there's some kind of unexplained things, and just like we talked about, just the fact that having that type of costume back then would be pretty amazing in itself. Even if it wasn't a hoax and someone just filmed that and said, you know what, we made this being, we made this character, I mean, they would get a job instantly in some type of film industry.
Well, the thing is that there's weird stuff about it, but that doesn't mean it's Sasquatch.
I'm not saying it is. I'm asking for you. Would you feel that that's the most compelling piece of evidence? Period.
I mean, the thing is I don't really find any of it compelling to the degree that I think that there's a literal Bigfoot. But I mean, as far as
me neither.
Yeah, as far as stuff that has not been quote unquote officially debunked, I mean, yeah, there's aspects of that film that are strange. I mean, you could say the same thing about a lot of UFO sightings. You can't 100% be like, oh, that's 100% ball lightning, or that's 100% a balloon, or something like that. But just because you can't say what precisely went on doesn't necessarily mean that it's aliens or Bigfoot. That you can't make that leap. That's not.
I just had this conversation on Penguin's
acid.
Actually.
No.
Yeah, I like Penguin.
Tip your waitress, folks. I wanted to actually ask you, Erica. I think you made a good point. I wanted to think in the debate. I wanted to know how convincing his rebuttal was. There's an arms race with intelligence that, because creationists, I think, often ask, why don't we have these massive, we could have massively bigger brains. And part of it is because how hard it is to get a human through the birth canal. His response seemed to be, I'm going to put it in joke form.
They have vaginas.
Well, I would say his response was kind of thick hips, y'all.
Yeah.
Seemed to be his
thick thighs save lives. Yeah, that was.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me,
tell me more.
To me, the weirdest part about the costume, or the subject of the Patterson-Gimlin film, right? Is that, which is like the main thing that they all draw from for like this, what this thing looks like, or what these things look like. Is that, again, and I pointed this out to him in our conversation, you've got a crest, which is almost always a male primate trait in big hominoids, big male gorillas, male paranthropines, and male chimpanzees, albeit to a lesser extent.
Birdopithecus.
Birdopithecus, of course.
Yep.
So it's like this definitively male trait, and then at the same time, she's got these big pendulous breasts, which are enormous for a primate. I mean, human breasts are already enormous for a primate, but this is taking it to the next level. Like Patty's kind of stacked is kind of the idea.
I need my blushy.
Yeah, and so I mean, to me, I see those two things, and he kind of made the argument that it's like, all right, well, you've got small-brained hominins like Australopithecines, and it wouldn't have been as difficult for them to get through the birth canal as extant humans because their brains weren't that big, even though they narrowed the hip canal for standing bipedally. And like, I can get behind that. I would agree that kind of works. But at the same time, if we're talking about a Gigantopithecus or a Paranthropine for that matter, we're talking about a head that's quite a bit bigger than the Australopithecines already. So you're already going to have issues with that bipedality. It shouldn't have that proposed masculine gait or whatever. I mean,
I just think like starting from this premise of like, there's this film and everybody's like, how can we explain this film? And they're like, oh my God, how could they have had a suit that looked like that? And then we start to spin off all these ideas around like, look at the head, look at the breasts, look at the gait, look at the this, look at the that. I'm like, wait a second. This is some film that like can't be really corroborated by anything on an animal that everybody says making thousands of sightings all over the place, that we have no remnants, no bones, no anything. I think it creates, I mean, maybe this is like an area of science that I'm not familiar with, but like maybe these like anthropology type, historian types that make these hypotheses. They're like, well, if this was the case, and then this was the case, and this was the case, this could happen, and then that could have been happened. I'm like, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Like, until I actually see some biological evidence that would even point in that direction, then I'm not even going to consider any of that. I mean, like, to say that film, they're like, we can't explain certain things. I'm like you were saying, Erica, that doesn't mean anything. Like the fact that it was at that time period and like somebody had some suit that everybody's like, oh my God, we couldn't have recreated that suit in Hollywood. Whatever, man. I don't put an ounce of credit into that. I mean, so I find like this all is in alignment with this mythic creature, like thing that like we've talked about in different cultures and societies. Like this is a known thing that happens. I just think that like even the fact that like if you go to an academic credentialed institutions and you're like, find me people doing this work, there's like none of them. And if and it's not that it's career suicide, it's that it's just a waste of time. They got time. They want to spend time doing actual research, not doing this stuff that will just take them down some rabbit hole that leads to nowhere.
Tell us how you really feel, Jason.
Yeah.
You know what?
That is some passion. I think you're more passionate about it than Meldrum is.
Well,
and you know what? Jason brings up a good point.
Oh, soldier.
Of course he does. He's a smart guy.
You're right.
Also, when you put it in that sense, Jason, when you put it in that sense, Jason, that is an argument from incredulity.
Yeah,
it is.
That's not a good way to go.
I know, but what I wanted to
Sorry.
confer. He brings up a good point that people that are in the field doing real work, whether this is photographers that spend 10 years filming chimpanzees or whatever, none of them that are actually in the field have filmed a damn Bigfoot. So good point.
So now I've got way too many cues because being passionate and not being in the field and putting in the work. Amy, I need to respond to the terrible thing Simon said earlier. Can you make me full screen for just a tiny minute, and people can continue talking because probably no one other than Simus will get this. But I need to respond. Can you
Okay.
put me full screen?
Here we go.
Sure.
There we go.
Do.
It's the
Hold
Peter and Simus show.
It's going to be Gavin, don't worry.
on. Oh my.
Oh, look at that beauty. Under investigation, Simon Spunk. It's just kind of there we go. Please can you send those to me?
Is that Monaco?
That's why I wanted to get in touch with you.
Thank you so much. Yes, please send those to me. I'll make sure they're displayed on the show on Monday. And yeah, that is Monaco.
Okay.
Is that a Ford F-250 right there? I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
So
It looked like one of the fast cars. That
It's
went from-
one of those. It's one of those weird Italian cars. It's I don't know the exact.
Looks like
make.
I played those games on Nintendo. Now I know what car you guys are talking about.
The
Looks like
F1.
They're
looks
carts.
Yeah, it
He's
looks
a
like
plumber.
Looks like a 2019 Ferrari, if I'm not mistaken.
I have no clue. I'll have to look because I just looked for a picture because I can't use video because they will take down Amy's channel if I do. So
Yeah, very much so.
I chose not to.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna push back on Jason a little bit here. I'm gonna
Go
push
for
back
it.
on Jason a little. I think that in the case of like really like out of left field claims, right? If you show up and you're like, I have this video of this thing, or I have this ancient artifact that proves, people harnessed gunpowder in 10,000 BC, or some wild claim like that, and you show up with either an artifact or a video or whatever, and are making this like kind of grandiose claim, I think it's worth giving it some attention if you can't directly write it off. I think if you want to say you can directly write it off, I think you're wrong. I don't think that you can look at the Patterson Gimlin film, as silly and as memeable as it is, and say, yeah, dude, like this is dumb, it's totally explainable, it easily makes sense. I mean, I'm saying there are issues with it, and it's still not Sasquatch. I don't think it is. I don't think you can make that claim. I don't think anybody should have made that claim.
But
I don't
people make that claim though.
Yeah, and I don't think they should. I'm just saying that doesn't mean it doesn't warrant attention. I mean, if every time someone made some wild claim, like for instance in the case of the billy ape, right, or the unique subspecies of Pantroglodytes wentworthii, if we heard that and we're like, no, the chimps aren't supposed to live there. There's not a population of chimps living down there that has a unique social structure and, is weirdly larger than other chimps. That's stupid. We know that it's not there. Just because someone says that it's there doesn't mean it is. But if we never sent someone down there to at least check it out, we wouldn't know that it was.
I agree. But we found the billy ape, right?
It would totally agree.
We found that. And so let me ask you, how long have we had this?
No, Jason, that's not my point. My whole point isn't that we should be giving attention to Bigfoot. My point is that giving the film attention is not in and of itself worthless. The fact that we gave it like attention isn't bad, because what if there had been something? Now we know that there isn't, or at least currently we know that there isn't. But it's worth checking it out. I think there's merit to that.
Okay, how old is this film? It's from like
68, I think.
68,
so,
right? 68.
So
67.
67, sorry.
So we're talking like 50 years. So guess what? I think we've given it enough attention. Like, where it's 2020 and we're still talking about this film. And by the way, I think to say that, like, hey, have this film, I think we should give it some attention because there could be some potential there. Like, I'm not actually sure that's the case. This is an N of one. Like, where are the other films like this? This is constantly held up as like the gold standard.
There's a few others
of Bigfoot. Yeah, there's none like this.
If someone came into your office and was like, "I have a video of Bigfoot," you're telling me you wouldn't even watch it?
Only for shits and like just for.
Oh,
kids.
dude, that's
Just
so
for kids.
like.
Why?
I don't know. I don't think that's a good attitude to have about it. I mean, what if?
You know what? I think that the mythic aspects of Bigfoot have been spun and incorporated into our social constructs the same way as many of the other things. And I think it's dangerous. I think that we spread concepts around that have no basis in fact, and that they affect how people think. And it happens all the time in all these other aspects. Bigfoot is like the grandfather of all this. It's like this thing that everybody's like, it could exist. How can you like?
No, dude, that's just not accurate. Cryptozoology and claiming about weird critters that are lurking just around the corner.
There's zero, like, you know what? There's no actual.
That's got such an ancient history. Bigfoot's not the grandfather of that. Spring-heeled Jack was in like the 1700s.
I'm saying modern. I'm saying of our modern era of conspiracy. I don't want to say conspiratorial, but these kinds of mythic aspects in the United States, like in the 20th century. It's Bigfoot is a big is. If you said what's like the one myth in America, I mean there would be other ones. But I mean, I think Bigfoot it lives in people's memories a lot.
No, I agree. I agree with you on that.
So I'm just saying that if such evidence existed that would suggest further actual legitimate scientific research in this particular area, people would be doing it. People aren't doing it, and I'm not saying that that's the reasoning why Bigfoot. I don't think Bigfoot is existent. I think that that's just supportive evidence of the fact that there's literally no actual evidence in place that would allow people to do that kind of research. Now,
right.
I'm not saying Bigfoot doesn't exist.
No,
okay?
no.
It could be like a 1% chance. Okay.
I'm with you on that, Jason.
You know?
I'm totally on board with that.
Okay.
I think you're right. I don't think Bigfoot exists, and I don't think that we have even close to a substantive amount of evidence to be, assigning teams to go comb the Pacific Northwest. Right. But I think that it sets a really bad precedent to be like, oh well, this isn't even worth looking at. No, I think it's important to garner this idea of like, okay, maybe there are, because we know for a fact that there are undiscovered organisms on this planet. Are they as big as Bigfoot? No. Do I think that they could be that big? No, probably not, unless they're living like, in under the Arctic sheet or something like that, right. And something along those lines.
I totally agree.
There's one in Tennessee, Birdopithecus.
Oh, true. But to your point of like experts, because I put a lot of stock in folks who know the field. I that's like my MO. And I think that there's something to it. I think you would be very surprised at some of the comments of physical anthropologists that actually viewed the film when it first came out. Because the majority of people had the attitude that you have right now, which is they literally wouldn't watch it. And the ones who did watched it and said, that's kind of weird, but I don't think it's Bigfoot. And that's where I stand now. But then you've got guys like Grover Krantz. You've got guys like what's his name? Jack Napier. Guys who actually do have a background in this kind of thing, who thought it was kind of mysterious and wanted to pay it some attention. Didn't mean they didn't do good conventional work, and maybe their work with this wasn't as robust. But to say that it's like outwardly not compelling at all, particularly since like, and I would hope that you would do this to me if I ever did this to you, but it's like, that maybe is a field that you're not as familiar with. I think that's a little dismissive.
Well, I mean, I think just in science in general, like let's step back and say science in general. Science wants to uncover things. Science acknowledges that it doesn't know everything, or the people who conduct scientific processes and methodologies acknowledge there are many things we don't know. That's what science is about, is uncovering that which we don't know and acknowledging that we have much to learn. Totally agree with that. And so, but in addition to that, science goes where the evidence goes. And so if there is very, very, very little evidence to suggest that Bigfoot exists, but then until such a time as that evidence exists, people aren't going to actually do that kind of research. And the fact that, just as you described, a large animal with so many sightings in the United States, like you mentioned with the migratory pattern structure and the metabolic aspects.
Oh yeah, it doesn't check out. It doesn't check out.
Exactly. So that doesn't mean that folks can't say, let's hypothesize around that. Fine. I mean, I'm not an anthropologist. Frankly, like I don't want to be dismissive on that particular topic. I'm a physical geoscientist. I do quantitative work, biological associated work. the anthropological work that is more qualitative, I'm not really into that. I think that, again, I think you can make all the hypotheses you want, but until you can back it up with actual quantitative evidence, then it's just a hypothesis, you know. And anybody can make a hypothesis.
I would. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Pat.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of push back both
That's
ways.
fine. I'm totally.
No.
Oh, no, me too.
I'm gonna push back on anybody.
I'm used to that, baby.
Pushing real good.
No, but Erica is, someone in the field. This is my caution, though. When people with terminal degrees, professional credentials, and other things engage in, let's call it highly speculative hypotheses, or in entertaining popular culture, what happens is it is the side effect within our society is the production of credulity beyond that which is justifiable. Every time someone that has a prestigious degree goes off for whatever reason, whatever motivation they have, whether it's popularity, financial, becoming rich, or something like that, and but they have whatever suffix after their name gives them credibility, it allows the average person who is already predisposed to wanting to believe this kind of thing to pursue it at a level which becomes pseudo-religious. And in that way, I caution anyone.
Well said.
I think that's fair. I think that is a fair assessment, and I think you're right. I think that you can run into dangerous territory there for sure. The only reason why I'm kind of coming out here and defending Jeff is because, one, I like him, but two, I've read some of his conventional stuff, and I read a ton of anthropology and primatology, and kind of to what Jason was just saying there, I would push back on that and say biological anthropology is almost all measuring. I understand that there's a qualitative aspect to what you do with those measurements, but it is pretty much exclusively quantitative when you find something. It's what's the in situ environment. It's what's the soil content like. It's what's the difference between the brow ridge, to the mandible. It's like what's your prognathism. What's the angle of the femoral head. It's angles. It's measurements. It's reconstruction, of course, which requires a degree of interpretation if you're dealing with something that's crippled. But paleoanthropology is the marriage of primatology and geology in many ways. And I think that it's unfair to characterize that as qualitative. And the only reason I say that is because I'm a primatologist, hopefully going to be a primatologist, which is a lot of ecology, but it's a little bit of ant too. And everything that I've ever read that's anthropologic, right? That's biological anthropology, it's nothing but measurements. I encourage you to check out some of these papers. There's really not all that much interpretation going on. It's like endocasts and freaking measuring layers of ash as it is deposited at the top of a rock shelter and determining the age, etc.
Certainly, I have my master's is in geological sciences. My PhD's in climatology, but certainly paleontology analysis. There's a huge amount of similar kind of measurement facets to particularly for larger species, but nonetheless, there is a lot of qualitative examination in interpreting what those measurements mean and how that may, a geologist in many ways is like a doctor. You're diagnosing what you're seeing, and you're certainly using quantitative aspects, but there are hypotheses that are proposed to say what was the landscape, what could the landscape have been like given that quantitative information. So I acknowledge it is quantitative, but this Bigfoot stuff, correct me if I'm wrong, there's zero actual...
No. Listen, I'm really not trying to mischaracterize my position.
I know you're not.
I'm just I do like Jeff, and like I said, I put one of his comments. Sarmiento's a primate locomotion expert on the side there, but that's what I put in the chat is a great example of how something like trackways plays into an interpretation of a site. here he's coming out. Sarmiento and Meldrum are the ones that are poo-pooing this idea that bipedality evolved in the Miocene on the basis that you don't have the proper biomechanics, and biomechanics is just math in motion. It's taking math and applying it to biological organisms, how they bear their weight, and how they're structured. So I think that what we're dealing with here, and this is kind of my honest position on the whole thing, is I think that there's a difference in how work is being conducted. I think that someone can have a hobby and treat it a certain way, and they can have a job and treat it another way. We see it all the time in young Earth creationism with the likes of Andrew Snelling or Jason Lyle, guys who do, passable, conventional work, and then turn around and just absolutely abort the science.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a doable thing, and I'm not saying even that that's what Meldrum's doing. I'm just saying that's on the table, and I think that it's
doable is probably not the right word. It just happens.
Sorry, I missed that. What'd you say?
I said doable is probably not the right word, because if you're not using science, it's not truly doable. But yeah, I get what you mean by the fact that there's
Sorry,
this
I may not have been.
No, I mean, there's a dichotomy in what we do as a profession with science versus what we do as a religion, right? Whether religion is your Bigfoot or your flat Earth, just like we said before, you can separate that.
I mean, you could even take that and apply it. You can apply that to anything. It's like the rigor that you use in your job may not be the same rigor that you use, when you're trying to argue that, you did the chores last week to your spouse or something like that. It's like, you don't feel like doing the chores.
But Erica, are you familiar with Meldrum's non-biomechanical and anthropological work?
Only tangentially, because I'm not interested in Bigfoot very much.
Well, but you also know that he writes about, theologically related materials, like he defended a Jewish migration to America to be reconciled with his. He actually wrote a book and several authoritative papers in journals defending a genesis of indigenous people of both South and North America to correspond with his theological worldview. Are you familiar with that as well? He defended the Mormon worldview as far as
Mormon worldview, basically. Yeah.
Wait, is he a Mormon?
Yes.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I mean, when I look at someone's scholarship, right, and I see them in a questionable area, particularly, I'm an archaeologist, so anthropology is something I deal with quite a bit, and someone makes a statement about an ancient society, and it kind of strikes me as odd. I then look at anything they may have wrote that is outside, quote unquote, their wheelhouse.
Wait,
if it's outside their wheelhouse, then I start looking at other work they have that can be critically and methodologically discredited. If I discredit enough of their work, then I discredit their main body of scholarship, because they're prone to credulity in other areas. And that's, as a scientist, an anthropologist, an archaeologist, historian, I can't separate someone's propositions that they make adjacent to their field using their special field. I mean, if it would be one thing if I were to say I'm Pat Lowinger and I'm going to show you woodworking. Well, that's different than me telling you I'm Pat Lowinger, archaeologist, and I'm going to explain to you some false and highly misleading information using my credential. And that's
I had no idea. Do you have a source on that by chance? I'd be interested in looking into it.
Well, it's right on Wiki. I'm looking at it right now. He is an active member in the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Is it bad that? Oh God, is it bad that
his degrees came from BYU as well? Three of them.
Oh boy,
everything's making sense.
Is it bad that a Mormon stance to me is more of a red flag than a Bigfoot stance?
Well, the book, it might be worth your time going and reading it. I mean, because you've cited him, right? He in 2011 he wrote a book with Trent Stevens called "Who Are the Children of Lehi? DNA and the Book of Mormon."
Yeah,
and he defends the theological worldview as presented in Mormonism, and even he says that the evidence is inconclusive when we found no evidence to support that view within DNA studies. And he actually wrote several papers on it. and they were all in like the Journal of Mormon Studies. So this is my problem: is he walks around and throws his PhD around, and then he's given credibility in his primary field, which maybe it's due, but when you discredit yourself in tangential pursuits, I'm sorry. When you become an apologist,
don't be sorry.
Make you credible.
I'm seeing this. Oh Lord. Okay, but also side note, to the credit, I suppose, or I guess I don't like playing the university games too much, but he does have his PhD from a highly credible university. Stony Brook is like top tier anth, and he also got his postdoc at Duke, which is also top tier anth. But
wait, what?
Anthropology.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I think his PhD's from BYU.
Is it from PY?
Yeah, I think it's undergrad. Am I right about that? Or maybe
no, it's undergrad. PhD in anatomical sciences with emphasis in anthropology from Stony Brook. Yeah, so he got his PhD in Stony Brook.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay.
Okay.
State University of New York. Gotcha.
Okay, Pat. To your point, I had no idea this guy was a Mormon. That is, you're 100% correct from an archaeological stance. I mean, I think too. Because it's Mormonism, which is like even most biblical scholars deem as effectively indefensible. And then of course it is from an archaeological, anthropological, historical perspective as well. That's a super fair criticism, and I didn't know that.
Well,
I would be equally incredulous if he told me Jesus had size 15 sandals.
Nice.
No, and Erica, you did a fabulous job. But I think, as a scholar, like I'm sure Jason, as a climatologist, would, if someone came in the room and said they were a climate denier but had the proper credentials, he would give them a fair treatment. But if he found out, all their research had been funded by certain people, and he had a worldview that, in a way, showed a propensity to not be, or to be overly credulous in some things and to be overly willing to be denying others. I think that, as an academic, you have to look at that. I mean, for example, let's just say I was a raging misogynist, right? And if I was writing papers about anthropological models and talking about, the interpretation of material culture, you would have to look at my biases as possibly coloring and distorting anything that I do in the field. How can I properly construct a feminist theology, feminist framework for interpretation of material culture if I'm a raging misogynist? And that's where I would push back. And people have to be judged with academia, not only for what they do in their field, but what they do outside the field.
And actually, it's an interesting point. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree exactly with it, but I can understand that, because I mean, this sounds like this guy actually published some work in that particular area. So like if he just had a position that he had some religious position that he was a Mormon, and then in addition, he was publishing in a particular area, and those were, kind of kept his professional career separate from what his personal beliefs were. I mean, I would be tempted to be like, look, I'll just look at your professional work.
That's exactly how I feel about the Bigfoot stuff, though. Like, that's exactly my position on because his conventional stuff, and again, like my formal training, some of it is an anth, and it's perfectly, in fact, it's quite good. It's quite rigorous. Usually he's not the sole author, of course, at least on the stuff that I've read. But it's got rigor. It's pretty much, like I said earlier, like it's effectively all measurements. And that's kind of how I've been feeling. But again, it's almost like a 3 strikes you're out system. I mean, it's one thing if you've got a Bigfoot hobby, right? It's another thing if you're not an archaeologist and you're publishing work on, ancient Jewish folks crossing the sea and like colonizing North America.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he has a book on Bigfoot. It seems like he doesn't have a huge set of. There's no a lot of publications on Bigfoot. He has publications in other area in his anatomical anthropology, whatever area but it almost seems like when he talks about Bigfoot, he talks around it. That he talks about like like these facets that are associated with anthropology and, like you were saying, like the measurement aspects, etc. But has he ever come out and say, I think Bigfoot exists, I think there is a creature walking around, I mean, I think there's ample evidence to suggest that Bigfoot exists? Does he say that?
In his professional career, yeah. And I think, at least from what I remember, he's almost gotten sacked for it a couple times. I mean, he's a guy at Idaho State, and they're not a big fan of it. But he actually keeps it too on his resume. Like, you can find his CV. I think it's a CV online. Like, his CV's public, and you can find, like, he's got plenty of really awesome conventional work, or really awesome from what I can see. I've read some of it, and then there's Bigfoot stuff on there too.
And then there's Bigfoot. Happens to us all. Happens to us. Yeah, I didn't know anything about the Mormon stuff either, to be completely fair.
That's totally
that caught me off guard.
Learned it. That shows what I know. I mean, I literally read the guy's whole Bigfoot book, and I didn't know he was a Mormon.
And I will say that's common. Before you just say Bird, I will say that is common. That whole. And I hate to keep on bringing that up to Flat Earth, but a Flat Earther will never talk about the religion. Like, they will keep it as far away from possible until you push them on it a little bit. And then they're like, oh, of course, I don't believe in evolution or the Flat Earth or all this because of God. These dirty, dirty heathens. You're like, oh. I don't know why we weren't talking about that, but so I'm getting the same vibe. It's like he would never talk about Mormonism, but if he asked the right question, he'd be like, "Oh, of course, I believe in this because of, I guess, Jeebus and the Native Americans, and we'll just tie it all together." And okay, Bird, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So knowing that, what you know now, Erica, would that make any difference in how you would have debated him, or would you have brought that up or criticized it, or what?
No, I mean, I'm not. I don't make it a habit to try to talk about something that's completely outside of the scope of a debate, right? I mean, if we were talking about his Mormonism, it would be one thing, but I probably wouldn't have brought it up. But it certainly does change the framing of it all. I mean, it's like it's one thing if you've got. I mean, it would be like finding out that your archaeologist, like your local archaeologist who, you like their work, they do decent work, and they have like a passing Loch Ness Monster interest. You're like, okay, that's kind of weird, but whatever. I mean, I guess as long as it doesn't impact his professional life, there's no mention of the Loch Ness Monster in his professional life. That's good. And then you find out they're a young Earth creationist.
Exactly.
They're doing their archaeology under that lens. All of a sudden, yeah, that's pretty big impact.
Gotcha. Okay. That's fair enough.
Okay, Erica. I'll be done after this, but I just pulled up a JSTOR article. The Mormon Bigfoot, David Patton's cane and the conception of evil in the LDS folklore. In the spring of 1835, Apostle David W. Patton claimed he saw Cain while he was serving in a mission in Tennessee and staying with the family Abraham O. Smoot, a future stake president and mayor of Salt Lake City and Provo. And
wait,
basically,
Cain, the Bible Cain?
Yeah, but they're saying this. They're saying that the abstract is saying that this was largely seen within Mormon folklore, that Bigfoot and or Cain is an actual person or actual belief structure within.
Wow.
And that's from the Journal of Mormon History, Volume 33, Number 3, Fall 2007.
Oh, wow. My jaw is dropped.
Yeah. The original article is by Matthew Bowman.
Oh my God! Can you put that in the side chat?
Sure, that'd be more.
I would love to dig into that.
Yeah.
See, just like Grumpy Old Cuss says, what if Bigfoot is a Mormon?
Yeah.
Making
God,
sense.
can you imagine?
Well, but I think that gives a predisposition, right? If it's
enormously so. That all of a sudden that creates an incentive.
And you can click on that. And
no, I've got it pulled up. Oh my God.
Uh-oh. Have you said what your... Oh, sorry.
In the Book of Mormon, there is a people group cursed by God by having dark skin. Maybe
the Mark of Cain, that shit gets me just as angry, if not more angry than the Native American shit. I'm sorry, you can keep on going.
But maybe it's a mistranslation and it's dark fur. Think about it.
Oh, good one.
Dark
Yeah.
fur. Okay, see?
Could
It's
be.
the mark of Bigfoot. See? Now
There
we're
you go.
starting to put things together.
Erica, I'm just interested. What is your what did you do your thesis on?
Oh, my thesis, like for my MRes?
Mhm.
I did my thesis on emergent monomorphism, so actually the loss of differences between the sexes in extant primates from a dimorphic species.
Okay, I have no idea what you just said, but it sounds cool.
It was really interesting. I analyzed like 111 canine dimensions, canine height dimensions, from 111 different species and subspecies, and basically just clocked them, trying to find which kind of pressures lead to emergent monomorphism. Because you get don't ask me questions like that. I'll go off. I really will. I'm going to stop myself before I go too far.
And that's okay. I want to thank all of you guys. I think we are going to switch into outros, but we had a lovely midnight ranting on is there evidence for, I'm going to keep on saying big feetsies now. I can't help it.
I like that.
Big feetsies. And with that, we are moving into... Woohoo! All right. Simos, we have
I love your awkward pauses, Amy. They're so awesome.
so much love. So much love. That's what I should have done a pause, but right there. There we go. Yep. Simos Funk, we have been midnight ranting on Is There Evidence for Bigfoot? I hope you had a good time. And where can people find you? And what are your final thoughts?
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, I've got quite a few things to say, so I'll try and wrap it up as quickly as possible. Firstly, Erica, never change. One of the reasons I so enjoy watching you is because you do have this open mind to people that are just spouting rubbish, as far as I can make out, right? Not that this particular guy was necessarily doing that, because he seemed like a lovely guy, genuinely. But nonetheless, as we're finding out, he may be a motivated reasoner, and there might be something a little more behind it. Nonetheless, I think when you draw a list of people who agree with this big foot fetish, shall we say, I think then you kind of see where people are coming from, right? And I would always go as a layman in these most of the topics that get discussed. I would always try to go with the consensus in the field, because of course that's going to be more accurate than any individual in the field saying X, Y, Z. So that's the first point. The second point is I think we're in a community. I come from the community called the Great Debate Community anyway. And of course, there's always going to be motivated reasoners in that community, pretty much on both sides. And as such, I think it does behoove us to take even outlandish claims and ideas with some sense of civility. And I would urge people in debates not to be emotional about the debate or just dismissive past the point of reason. And I think that open-mindedness that Erica displays better than almost anybody in the community that I've seen should be espoused. And I think people generally do. I think we generally try to do that, especially on the side that believes that they're skeptical. And it's not easy to do that, because of course, when somebody personally attacks you, the first thing you want to do is attack back. So I would just be aware of that and try to give people the benefit of the doubt wherever possible. And if you can't, disengage rather than responding to personal attacks. And I've seen a lot of that recently in the community. Having said all of that, I think that it's important also that we try to educate ourselves as much as possible on as many subjects as possible, because that's where the joy of life is. So I'll end it there. Of course, I do a Formula One podcast and I do DayZ podcast, DayZ streaming. The Formula One podcast is on Monday. I'm hoping to have Peter on, and people can look forward to that on my channel, which is, of course, Simon's Funk. So thank you very much, Amy. I think that's just about everything, and I'll leave the rest for those that are more eloquent than I am.
That was supremely
Thank you
elegant.
I know, right? Thank
Very
you
good.
so very much.
Simons, I'd love to come on, but the description of the last race, I enjoyed that so much. So I think you've got the same concept that Amy has, where you and Fabio talk first and then open it up to others. I'm really looking forward to what happens in Monaco and your show after that.
Fantastic. We'll be happy to have you. So thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you so very much, Simos. And okay, with that, we're switching over to Bird. Bird, we have been midnight ranting on is there evidence for Bigfoot. I hope you had a good time. And what are your final thoughts?
I always have a good time. This is a pretty cool conversation. And hashtag Birdopithecus. I'm out.
Thank you so very much, Bird. We're moving right along. Jason, we have been midnight ranting on is there evidence for Bigfoot? Where can people find you? Bigfoot. That is where my brain is. And Big Feetsies, I hope you had a good time. And what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I always have a good time. And I want to say just a couple brief things. One, that I certainly appreciate the like what Erica was saying, and didn't mean to be dismissive whatsoever. I'm certainly willing to consider other viewpoints, and I'm totally fine with that. On the Bigfoot scientific aspect, my general perspective is that Bigfoot is a manifestation of our culture right now. That certainly I think that there is some evidence that may either be constructed artificially, or there may be some legitimate evidence, but I don't think that evidence actually points effectively to Bigfoot. And then until such a time as we have more substantial evidence, that we're not going to actually do any research in this area that's legitimate. And so maybe I'll just end it there. But again, I will just once again note that, that's just my opinions, and I'm always open to constructive criticism, and I always appreciate that. So thanks.
Well, you actually changed your mind, Jason?
Yeah, I've totally. I am now a Bigfoot. I'm a Bigfoot fan.
Hey, I get it.
I am in Idaho.
A Bigfootist.
Yeah, a Boogfootist.
Yeah.
And okay, thank you so very much, Jason. And moving right along, Peter, we have been midnight ranting on is there evidence for Bigfoot? I hope you had a good time. Where can people find you, and what are your final thoughts?
First, I want to address the elephant in the room, because we had Bird in here, and everyone, and I mean everyone on the planet, knows that Big Bird exists.
That's right.
We grew up with him.
Yeah.
And no one has ever mentioned Big Bird in this entire conversation, which I think is mind-boggling.
And you don't have to call me an elephant either. I know I'm fat, okay? Thank you.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. There's a difference between being big and being fat. I work with R and Raw. I know what being big means. Obviously, people can find me on my channel, and obviously, people know that when I do a shout out, I usually do a shout out for someone else. So, back to Formula One. We have to do this in style, and again, only Simus will ever recognize this. And I don't know much about the team color, so I heard recently that the team color was teal, But so there we go. In Formula One style, go subscribe to Amy Newman. She's part of Team YouTube, and you can find her right here. And she won't be talking about cars driving around in a city that wasn't made for the cars to be driving around in. But she does other stuff that's really interesting. And I shut up for most of this entire conversation because I think the moment Erica enters the room and starts talking, I just need to shut up and listen and learn, and that's pretty much what I did. It was a great show, and I'm going to check out the debate, which I haven't, because I've been on other streams and a private conversation before this. But it's always good to be on Amy's channel. So thanks for having me again.
Thank you so very much, Peter. And okay, we are moving along. Soldier of Science, how are you? I hope you had a good time. And where can people find you along with your final thoughts?
Oh, well, thank you as always for letting me join. I want to say, Erica, it was awesome hearing you come on and share that knowledge. Pat, I think you had some great points. Jason, you had some great points as always. So I really love hearing that. Of course, I think Bigfoot is just a product of agency, just like God is, right? It's basically a product of agency, but more or less what Jason said is it's really coming down to traditions that we have and beliefs that we had and looking into mystery. We love mystery. But my final thought will be what all of you kind of ended on with, discouraging someone partitioning their brain from being a scientist versus being religious. And what I mean by this is, yeah, you could be a great anthropologist. You could be really hardcore and robust and by the book anthropologist, and you still have a religion, whether it's God or whether it's your Bigfoot religion. And I think all of us acknowledge that humans are capable of this, and not only capable of this, it's probably the majority of people, that probably the majority of doctors that you go to that are very well capable of doing surgery on you might be a Mormon, for example, or might just have a belief in some sort of God. So I don't want you to discount good scientists because they have a partition in their brain that makes them believe crazy batshit stuff. And it's probably more harder than not to come out of that than the other way around. And that's it. Thank you guys for letting me join.
Woohoo! Thank you so very much, Soldier of Science. And okay, we are moving on to Mubarak. Mubarak, we have been midnight ranting on Is There Evidence for Bigfoot? I
Look at
hope
that
you had a
baby.
good time. Oh, puppers. It almost looks like, I think a chibi, but it almost looks like the Cowboy Bebop doggy.
It's like a palm, isn't it?
It is a palm.
Yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
palm.
Oh my god.
Yep.
He's so cute.
And so what are your final thoughts?
Well, first of all, Erica, you did a great job tonight. Good job. And yeah, I coming after the debate was great. Like as unusual for most recent debate on modern day debates, that they don't. I don't know. Sometimes I get frustrated with some of those debates, and I start walking around, pacing around my apartment, stuffing my face with ice cream. But that happens a lot. But the cases with this debate was so nice that I actually could listen to it and learn something new and learn about the Bigfoot. Sorry, I'm being attacked. I'm being attacked by a cat right now. So,
Aw, kitty.
I know I'm surrounded by animals. But coming to the after show and knowing kind of the behind the scenes with Erica's opponent, that there is some beliefs behind it that changes the way I look at it now. Kind of, I want to go back and rewatch the debate just to see how it changed my thinking about what he's saying. Because in the beginning, he was just another person, scientist with a with degrees talking about Bigfoot. Now, no, he have some other supernatural beliefs connected to Bigfoot. So that changes the fact. And um, yeah, beliefs influence decisions and actions. Even a good doctor with a belief would make bad decision based on his religion. Um, Especially when it comes down to uh, any woman right, and especially when it comes down to birthright or of that sort. I like what Simon talked about kind of quickly about that doctor being good and religious. I have multiple occasions where friends would go to a doctor and they will cite their religion to deny them medication or deny them access to medical health because of their religion, and that just pissed me off. That's the truth. Just pissed me off. But that's beyond the point. Erica, good job. I love seeing you and watching your videos and your interviews and debates. So keep it up. I'm looking forward to try to read your thesis. Just I'm like I we'll see. Maybe when it comes down and like your thesis for dummies, I probably will try it then. But I will see. I like to when I know someone online and know that they have something published to go on and look through it and maybe skim through it. But
Thank you.
hopefully
That means enough. That means enough.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's all I have.
Mubarak, you
Thank
forgot
you
where
so
people
very
can
much,
find
Giovanni.
you.
Oh, okay. Where people could find me, they could find me on they could find me on Arn Ra shows the infidel reading the Quran lessons for infidels. Um, we had a very good session last weekend. Surprisingly, we didn't have any.
I'm still
Any,
recovering from that one. I'm still recovering from that one. I still have nightmares on the angel Gabriel and then the Holy Spirit through the angel Gabriel blowing into Mary's vagina to conceive Jesus. That's probably something I won't be able to shed for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
Sounds like a party.
yeah.
Say, now you have my attention.
It
Go
is
on.
true. It is in the Quran. According to the Quran, Jesus was conceived by oral sex. So that's that's
Jesus,
in the Quran.
to be more specific, Jesus was conceived through a blowjob.
You have blowjob,
Yeah,
yes.
just as a medical addendum, never blow there, people.
Always
to each
suck.
their own.
And
To
with
each their
that,
own.
Yeah. With that note,
and okay, Tatilik.
Okay.
I'm so, and if I messed up your name, I'm so sorry. I'm a little special. But with that, I hope you had a good time. And where can people find you? And what are your final thoughts?
I bet he's got a 15-foot penis there.
Oh, God, Kent.
So I don't have any social media yet. I want to finish school before
Good for you.
get online. I did enjoy it very much. I admire all of you, and I'm so happy to participate in these open mics and stuff. I just wanted to say, turning into a bird to get someone pregnant is a very Zeus thing to do, just for Christians and Jews to consider. And yeah, I had a blast, and really, that's all. That's all.
Woohoo! Thank you so very much, Tatilik. Wait, I'm gonna say this. Talik. There we go. I can't just Bible study it. I just can't. Because I'll tell you, when I'm in the Bible study, I take like 2 seconds out of it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just replacing Frankenus with Frankenlicorice, and it just goes right over. And okay, we're moving along. Just a few people left. Pat, we have been midnight ranting on, is there evidence? Hopefully good evidence, but I'm not sure if we got that. But is there evidence for Bigfoot? I hope you had a good time. Where can people find you? And what are your final thoughts?
You're on mute, Pat.
Well, I feel dumb now. So I am still of the opinion there's no Bigfoot. I want to take a moment to thank Amy for hosting this, and I want to tell Erica she did a fantastic job. And I will state now, I probably should have been a little more charitable in the examination of Dr. Meldrum's field work as far as directly within his field, although the ancillary stuff is kind of hard to chew through, so to speak. And I just want to end with the reading of that last paragraph of that paper that I pulled up.
No. Oh, here we go.
And it begins with this. While the supernatural is preserved, however, its borders are reframed and reduced. In the new Cain, the power of malevolent supernatural is severely curtailed, not only through the fading of overt demonology from Cain's story, but also through the severing of his link with Africa. Both developments reflect a new, largely intangible conception of evil. No longer can it be located on a specific continent or its residue been seen on skin. Similarly, no longer are saints warned of it. In Brigham Young's words, demons visiting the human family with various manifestations. Importantly, however, the basic supernatural premise of Cain's existence and the network of religious assumptions that rest upon it, that of the validity of the Bible, the literalness of Adam and Eve, and the existence of an interventionist God remains unquestioned. If Cain is removed as one of these demonic manifestations, it is no longer a representative of the material, aggressive Pauline conception of evils. His transformation into Bigfoot allows the supernaturalism of his story to persevere and that of Mormonism to be affirmed.
I didn't think my jaw could drop twice in one.
Yikes.
So that's from Matthew Bowman's 2007 article. And with that, I will yield the rest of my time.
And mic dropped.
And yeah, I mean, I am just like with Erica here. Until this conversation, I would have, if it wasn't for you, Pat, this whole stream, I would have went a whole Bigfoot debate and not known. So thank you so very much. And and okay, there's only 3 people left. Erica, I just want to say thank you so much. It was an awesome debate. We have been midnight ranting on, is there evidence for a Bigfoot? I hope you had a good time. And where can people find you and your final thoughts?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, the debate was really fun. I'm glad everyone else enjoyed it. I mean, if nothing else, we got to talk about Bigfoot for 3 hours, which is, it's novel. It's definitely novel. Thanks everyone for listening to me talk about primates and other hominins and things of that nature pretty much all evening, and for suffering my my defense of our Mormon friend, Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, who I also did not know was a Mormon. That's gonna give me some good reading to do. We're always learning here. That's the good news. You can find me at my channel, which is just Guts at Gibbon. I do a whole lot of videos, mostly debunking young Earth creationism, but I'm hoping to pivot that more into a 50-50 with just general science. I did a video earlier today that covered some cool stuff on the evolution of human eccrine glands, the recent genes that they've managed to kind of suss out involved in that. And I think it's cool and enjoyable, So you can check that out if you feel like it or not. I don't talk about Bigfoot over there, unfortunately. But thank you again for having me on. This has been a real blast.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on here, and thank you for that awesome debate. And okay, James, land us home. We have been midnight ranting on does Bigfoot, I was going to say does Bigfoot exist, but really is there evidence for Bigfoot? The floor is yours.
So yeah, I've been in the back for like 10 minutes, Amy. But yeah, guys, thank you for coming on so much, Erica. It was really good to hear from you. You did a good job in the debate, and it was a really good discussion on here. I think we all learned some new things. I know on this particular topic, I have a lot to learn. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time researching it, but it is interesting to me. And yeah, I got to learn a lot today. So thanks, guys. And yeah, do it to me, Amy. Thank you, Bird.
Yeah.
Woohoo! And okay. I hope you all had a fun time on this episode of Midnight Ranting.
Yeah.
Is there evidence for Bigfoot? Where we grabbed that big old magnifying glass and went looking for a very good time. I want to thank my co-host, James W., and tonight's awesome debater, Erica / Gutsick Gibbon, with our guests, Pat, Oz, Tiktaalik, Mubarak, Soldier of Science, Peter, Jason, Bird, and Simos Funk, along with all the lovely people in chat and our awesome mods who make this stream so great. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and hit that all button icon so you can be part of our live streams for YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook. And if you'd like to help make more awesome fun content, feel free to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Amy Newman. I'm Amy Newman, and we will see you all on the next episode of Skeptic Ball Z.
Woo-hoo.
Woohoo!